It's Enchanted.
tried to frame ourselves as poorly as possible so you can see us. Let's see. Give me just a second to make sure I'm not drowning myself out with the desktop audio, which I think I am. All right. How's that for you guys? Oh, thanks so much for subscribing. Fat Mandu 888. Oh man, music's too loud. All right.
You should probably keep it quieter too, since I'm kind of quiet.
Yeah, we can just really slow down the music. You guys probably can't hear this at all, but let's see. Who do we have in chat? We've got chat directly over Lemon's face.
I think it's a good place. There we go.
Let's do that. There we go. Let's see. Ajax, how's it going? Leon tries to art, negative first. Well, there we go. Super Mario Gaming, good to see you. Cool Spaghetti. Christoph, the game guy, good to see you. Peace Before the Storm. Indeed. I just dragged
put it
chat.
above my head.
All right.
We're in the middle. Chat can be between us.
All right. Let's see. The dud. Why weren't Sonic X feats considered? We're going to get to all of that later. Great Andex, it's me. Oh, gosh, I have my face covered.
Wait, did you make him? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Let's see. Stylish, good to see you here. Ajax, like I said, we're going to get into... I'm going to fix this, I'm sorry. We're going to get into some more specific questions later on. The reality is, I'm hiding the fact that I just don't know what I'm doing. That seems like it was a joke. I accidentally moved the screen. Okay. Wait, we just had that issue.
Just
all right,
top right.
We're putting it there. Fine. Percival, Knight of the Flames. Can't wait to see the Pure Denial and Headcanon LMAO. We'll get to that. Oh man, I should have denied denial. That would have been the funniest thing anyone's ever said.
My headcanon is that you did deny it.
Debate me, why can't Supersonic scale to Solus as an egg wizard? We'll get there. Fun fact about me, I just can't speak if I don't edit out my videos. Like, so my typical video length is 10 minutes on Ink Thinks, but my typical raw audio length before I edit out all of the mistakes is like 40 minutes. I mess up lines so often. All right, this is driving me crazy. I'm going to shrink it, and then I'm actually going to start talking to you all. Okay, there we go. Let's see. Why can no one agree on how fast Sonic is? That is a loaded question. Tim says, who's that guy with the beard? Hamsome. Thank you. I've been growing it out. I'm finally getting there. But yeah. I'm going to throw the mod team a loop and request my mod powers. All right, cool. Hubba Bubba, indeed. Bearded man, wow.
Decaf Potato asks for our fanfic. The rule is we have to share it now, which makes me sad.
Have we not shared the fanfic?
No, I said it was only if people asked for it.
Okay.
It's very terribly, intentionally bad.
We'll get to the fanfic. We don't have to read it right now.
I'm just going to give it to the mods to give to people who ask.
Okay.
I'm not reading it.
He sent it to his English teacher from high school for some reason. Very proud of it.
She cried.
Just kidding. All right. Sonic is actually faster than Fox. I haven't ever heard anyone say that, actually. Skip to the part about Chowmander. Oh, crap. Did we prepare Chowmander?
Chowmander's for next week.
Do you remember Sharpmander?
I do remember Sharpmander. I loved his games.
If you guys haven't heard, Sharpmander is
Can we do a Sharpmander versus Charmander episode?
Sharpmander versus Charmander. Do you guys know who that is? Did you see that debunk video? Yes, I did. The next debunk video, the gameplay one, that one was really funny. But we do have points to talk about it. I don't think that was a serious debunk video. I think it was just a funny video. Real fast, alternate ending. We do an alternate ending for every character just because we think it's fun for both fans of both characters to see their character win. So nothing was overturned. It doesn't have any effect on the result. It's just a fun way to see both characters. Let's see. So I think we're...
Also, yeah, we have like 15 pages of things to go through that people have asked us today.
Yep,
so
we've got a lot of stuff.
I hope everyone is ready to be here for the next 3 days.
Oh, wait, real fast. I do want to say, so Super Mario Gaming, do you guys have any idea for Shulk's opponent? So we're not starting it today. We can't really do it until we get monetized on YouTube. But eventually we're going to make it a fan-requested pick, kind of a wild card. Any character who's ever been in Smash Bros. But isn't already a character is eligible for that spot. We had it originally as a Kickstarter reward, but when we decided to end the Kickstarter, we were kind of left in a limbo of knowing what to do with it. So we're going to set it as a donation or Patreon reward. Anyone who's kind of donated or been a patron during a certain time period gets a vote on who it is. Not doing it quite yet, though. We need to monetize the channel, which we're getting close. Anyway, we've been going about 10 minutes. I've got my MacBook here so I can have notes on everything we're talking about. I am going to take some water, or drink some water. Guys, I can't freaking talk. I say this every stream, too. You want to kind of give them a rundown of what we're doing here and a brief syllabus
Syllabus. Do you want me to give the schedule or start into it? Your
just
water
very...
takes. Oh, you have it. Okay. Yeah. So today we had. I don't know if anyone noticed. We had a bit of a controversial episode recently. We want to something we're wanting to do in general is have Q&As about the episode. This one probably is going to have a lot more comments to go through than normal. So we have a lot of those to get to. But before that, we've kind of realized that our philosophy as a series hasn't been made as clear as we've intended. We have that rule set, but it was created with kind of different expectations than what we now have. Not necessarily for the series, but who would be viewing it. Ink and I both came into this without any formal experience in any kind of Versus community. And so when we put those rules together, they were made for us to guide our own thoughts on how to deal with these characters, rather than as a way to distinguish us from existing rule sets and interpretations.
But part of the reason, real fast, for why the rule set reads so confusingly, for example, someone just made a video, I don't know if I call it a debunk video, but kind of critiquing our latest Sonic vs. Fox video, and something they brought up very specifically is Rule 6, which is worded in a way to make it sound like characters can only use stuff that they show in Smash, like only those actual moves. And the reason it sounds so bad is because I was talking with Lemon when we were doing the Kickstarter, and he's like, well, we have this philosophy, we need to get it written down into something. So I thought, oh, okay, I got this. Let me open up Microsoft Paint. I meant Photoshop. And just type something out. And so you see my point here. I kind of typed them out, not really taking into account how important it would be to get the wording down super precisely. So that's something we're going to work on refining, but we'll get to our general philosophy a bit more in a second.
Yeah. With that, though, before we get into any of the specific questions that people have asked or objections they have, we do want to go over some general things for the series regarding our philosophy. We feel like those are going to answer most of people's major objections, or at least make our stance more clear. Our goal isn't to convince people that we're right. I don't think you can be right in a Versus series, or we're trying to interpret these characters' feats. Ultimately, anything you do is based on assumptions. And starting with different assumptions gives you wildly different results.
And I don't know if it's necessarily that no one can be right. It's just that there's so many different ways to be right. Like, you get some people like Game Theorists videos, which I'm sure Sonic fans love, where for his videos, just for the sake of entertainment, he looked only at gameplay feats, ignored everything else. He's like, well, you can see here Sonic actually only goes 22 miles per hour, so that's his speed. Whereas you can get some people who never want to look at a single second of gameplay, never want to look at a single second of cutscenes, and only look at lore and things like that. And both of those describe very different characters, and so not only is it hard to find a balance of how to weigh each different thing, but ultimately people just end up arguing about different characters altogether.
And so I guess what it boils down to is that we're not here to be proven right or wrong, or to prove anyone else right or wrong. It's going to be fruitless because we're just approaching characters in a different way than most people do. What we're hoping to do is to make it clear how we're approaching the series and how we're interpreting things. And we're open to debate and to receiving criticism, but we're not going to spend an hour debating one point, because the fundamental difference is that our interpretation of things just doesn't let that hold up. And we don't feel the need to prove ourselves right, and we don't feel the need to prove anyone else wrong either.
Well, kind of expounding on that, it's not that we don't feel the need to prove ourselves right in the sense that we just don't put thought into our videos. What it is generally most things tie back to the general philosophy that we have, or the general philosophy that other people have. So there's multiple right answers to a really subjective question, which is how you get so many different interpretations of a character. But yeah, so kind of after we go over the general philosophy, we're going to talk about other specific things like bias. Are we biased towards certain characters? How do we handle scaling? Things like that. But then we're going to start going into some more specific feats, as well as videos that people have made, things like that.
And because we are doing a stream and we don't want to do this stream for 12 hours straight, we're probably not going to go into excruciating detail into anything. We will do a pass and give our interpretation. And if you want to talk in more detail later, I can do that over Discord.
But we do have a list of notes here of things that we do want to make sure to talk about.
We do have a lot to go through, even with
Yeah,
just
let me do a quick scan through the Discord, or through the chat. Okay, I did make him moderator. Great.
Chat mods, can you make sure if there's anything you feel like we need to stop and address that you let us know? Just ping me in Discord or something.
Yeah. Let's see. How did you feel when you learned that I noticed Slippy? Okay, wait, so real fast I want to talk about that. So this video has a bit of continuity with the Falcon versus Falco video, which in that one, Slippy gets thrown out of an R-Wing. And in this one, Sonic and Fox race by Falco and Falcon as they're fighting and then run past Slippy as he's falling. So David Goldimer, I hope I said that right, is the first guy to, is the first person to notice it from what I saw. And I thought that was awesome. Anyway. I think that's about it. Like we said, mods tag us if there's something we need to get into, but otherwise we can go ahead and get into the general philosophy of things, then get into specific feats. Let's see. So kind of the biggest difference in our philosophy is, I don't know if you'd say burden of proof, but how we start characters. A lot of people start characters and say, well, they have all these feats you see in their game, all these things that are implied, you have to disprove all of these. Whereas we start from the opposite end of the spectrum, each character starts from 0 and they have to earn every feat along the way. So we try to have as little assumptions as possible. There's a theory called Occam's razor, which is basically the interpretation of something that requires the least amount of jumps, the least amount of steps or assumptions. That's probably going to be your best way to go.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, I see a lot of people who ask why we don't consider some statement enough proof, or why we aren't considering certain feats, and it almost all boils down to requiring the proof in order to consider those feats in the first place. We don't really try to disprove anything, we're just interested in proving things. But the higher the feat, the more impressive the feat, the higher the burden of proof. Like to say that Ken can punch a car into oblivion is like, that's more than a normal person can do, but not by that much. But if we wanted to say that Ken can like shoot full-sized suns out of his fists, that would require much more proof.
Or a more appropriate example might be Ryu destroying a car versus Ryu destroying an island, or something like that. Basically, as the impressiveness of the feat scales, so does the need to make sure that is what's happening there, because there's a lot of assumptions that assumptions that are required for bigger feats like that don't always necessarily hold up along the way. But,
I don't think we have more to say about that point, though, do we? Just to keep in mind that that's kind of where all of our rules and philosophies are building from, is this idea of building a character up.
Yeah, so if there's 2 interpretations of a feat, one involves 10 different assumptions that don't have a ton behind them, and one involves 2 assumptions, we're probably going to default toward the one with 2. So next up is the other thing that kind of makes us unique is feats have to be shown, which that sounds like a weird thing to say makes us unique. Now, I guess, where do you notice the most incongruity with this?
Between, like, how our philosophy handles it differently, you mean?
Yeah, like if someone's coming to Smash Bracket from, say, Death Battle.
Let's see. I guess one of the big things is that off-screen feats are really hard to handle. So, like, there's a feat, this doesn't really scale to anyone, but the Egg Blaster, the final Egg Blaster in Sonic Battle, is said to have destroyed a group of stars. But that's all. Like, he says it, and a character goes, no, and that's it. And I'm not necessarily doubting that right now. I haven't weighed in firmly because it hasn't been relevant. But that isn't something that we can confirm for ourselves. Whereas a lot of other people accept it at just as truth because it was said to have happened. Or another thing is, like, fighting game characters especially are hit by it, where they will fight an opponent who has been shown to have some crazy level of power, and they beat them, but they've never shown that level of power themselves. That's kind of more into scaling, but in my mind, they're two sides of the same coin. Is that they've never shown the capability to do this thing, and therefore we can't consider them capable of doing that thing.
And the issue is with this, and kind of scaling what we'll get into more, is there comes a point where every single character in the series just starts to feel the same, which just isn't fun. Like I said, we're not doing this to feel unique. I'm just some fat guy with Adobe Premiere who thought that there would be a... Gosh, guys, I can't talk. Fat guy with Adobe Premiere who thought there would be some fun way to make a versus battle series. Like we said, I had zero exposure to it, didn't necessarily know what to expect going into it. So I came up with these set of rules that I just thought would be fun to use going forward. So that's kind of where that's coming from.
Yeah, basically.
Another thing that is really different about how we do things is the hierarchy of how we interpret feats. I mentioned briefly before, some people don't want to look at gameplay at all. Some people only want to look at gameplay. And what it boils down to between a lot of different versus battle discussions is what kinds of things you consider and in what priority. So what would you say the most common order is?
The most common order would... I don't know, because I haven't really tried to look into it. Based on what other people have told me, though, I feel like it goes statements first, and then, like, cutscene... Well, statements and then lore. I consider those different. And then cutscenes... Oh, sorry, Stylish.
Well, we probably have some people from the Versus community in the chat, or if any of you have any experience with Versus debating. So let's say we have lore, cutscenes, gameplay, in-game statements, and creator statements. I'm just curious, how would you guys, out of context of Smash Bracket, of Death Battle, of Versus Battle Wiki, anything like that, how would you contextualize those? Like, which would you give the most precedence to versus the least precedence? While you do that, I'm going to have a drink from my massive jug of water. When it comes to Smash Bracket, and we'll look at yours come in a second. Okay, so we have feats, scaling, statements, probably. That's from Robot972. Enjoy your drinking. Oh, thank you. Gameplay that is implied to be lore. I don't know what to do with that. So do you want to kind of go over the hierarchy and explain the order of why we weigh things the way we do?
Yeah, so the way that our hierarchy works, did I send that to you recently? I feel like I did. I just don't want to misremember.
We have it in the chat.
But the way that it works is we consider like cutscenes first. Those have the highest priority, and after that comes gameplay. After that is like in-game lore, and then statements, and then everything else comes after that. Do you have that up?
Yep, so we prioritize cutscenes over everything else, and then gameplay, which I think is a really unpopular take, because gameplay provides a lot of weird inconsistencies. We don't tend to use that for anti-feats or anything like that. We mostly use things further down the hierarchy to back things up higher on the hierarchy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so for instance, just because we are considering gameplay, and in gameplay Mario can be hurt by walking into a Goomba, we're not suddenly going to say that that is the entirety of his durability. I know that's a bad example because I think you literally said that in your Mario video, but that's why we're redoing it.
I didn't say that in my Mario video.
You said that in your Mario video.
Man, those videos were not... The animations were awesome, but anyway.
Yeah, but we are going to look at gameplay and use that to establish a consistent pattern of the characters. Where there's any ambiguity in the cutscenes, we're going to use consistency in the gameplay. We're going to use gameplay to establish feats. And if there's like some extremely consistent anti-feats in the gameplay, we might consider it. But I don't think we've had any examples of that happening. I guess maybe the only one I can think of is like falling into pits, but even then most characters have like falls from orbit. So.
And Samus is probably way more durable than she needs to be to fall into pit. That's so stupid. Anyway, so yeah, something we get a lot is, why do we use gameplay at all? and game mechanics.
A big reason for that just comes down to the fact that they're video games. We don't want to throw out the biggest portion of every character, every non-Fire Emblem character or Persona character.
Yeah.
Those guys have a lot of text. And so, like, there's some ambiguity introduced with gameplay and some consistency issues, and then there's also, like, a small gap between the intention of the character and what happens in gameplay. But we feel like those issues are usually minor enough that we can overlook them and still get an accurate picture of who we're dealing with. Like,
oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, the biggest thing I hear brought up is that gameplay paints a very different picture than the lore for most characters. But I don't think that that's necessarily true, because I feel like the things you fight and do in the game are representative of what they want you to be.
There comes a point where if you throw out gameplay altogether, it feels like you're playing as a different character than is being described in a lot of these sections, or a lot of these arguments. So for the most part, we try to match up who we're describing with the character you actually play as, and the character that you see in the cutscenes.
And I've heard a lot of people mention authorial intent. I think we mentioned that, again, just in the one Mario video. That's not...
The guy who made that is just...
He's pretty dumb,
Yeah.
We don't use that as a guiding principle. We consider authorial intent, like, casually to try and get a picture of who we're dealing with, but we don't use that at all for throwing out or keeping feats. We look at what's presented, because as much as I do think that the author intends for a character to be at a certain level of strength and presents that through story and gameplay, like, we ultimately can't figure out exactly what their intent is, and trying to do so is just going to give us... It's just going to cause us to use our own biases to throw things out, and that's what we try to avoid as much as possible, believe it or not.
Anyway, but this is one example how prioritizing gameplay and cutscenes over the lore of the series or over in-game text would provide a very different character. And so people who are going to try to debunk our videos, or people who are going to try to argue from a different perspective, are going to say things like, well, no, look, it says this in the lore, even if it does this in the cutscenes or this in the gameplay. And ultimately, that argument, I understand where it's coming from. It makes a lot of sense, and it's valid in its own right. But it's just not describing the series that they're trying to debunk, or it's not describing the character that we're describing here. They ultimately just end up at two very different things, and so it depends what you're trying to do with the character. And so arguments like that go against what we're doing with the series aren't necessarily going to be productive for refining the course of these videos, if that makes sense.
I think that also ties into what we were saying earlier about how there's a thousand ways to skin a cat, right? You can get right answers, get correct pictures of a character's strength with a bunch of different approaches. And the one that we're using is including gameplay. A lot of people don't agree with that, but it's not going to change. And that leads to some fundamentally different answers than other people get. But that's just part of what interested us, what we wanted to do in the series, and how we're going to be presenting things going forward.
So, in examples where gameplay contradicts lore, you might be able to give a better insight to that than I would, because you handle a majority of the bulk of the research. But in general, it comes to a point where we're just interested in what the characters can actually do. If we only take statements about characters, if we only take what they're implied to be able to do, not only is that hard to universalize and apply evenly to every single character, it also ends up with some really weird numbers that just don't feel representative of what you get. For example, you gave an example with Lantern from Pokemon.
Oh, right. So the Pokedex says that Lantern, the little anglerfish Pokemon, can light up the ocean from 3 miles deep. And that's, like, technically lore of the series, but getting into the actual math for that, you learn that the rate that water diffuses light is so great that the energy required to light up the surface of the ocean from 3 miles deep is, like, incomprehensibly more than the energy that the entire universe holds.
Right.
And, like, that's a situation where I'm pretty confident that isn't authorial intent. Like, no one intended for Lantern to be that strong. It's not represented in gameplay. It's not represented in like anything about Pokemon. And yet there's an argument that because that's written, that's what should happen. But for us, that's an outlier. Like,
Right.
outlier, or just not even considered, really.
But there's good examples in here. For example, Percival Knight of the Flame says lore is greater than cutscenes, is greater than statements, is way greater than gameplay. And once again, that's an argument that makes a lot of sense. Totally see where it's coming from. And also any argument made from that point of view, arguing that that should be the rules that we're using when they aren't, isn't going to be one that works here, if that makes sense. So if we're talking about feedback on one of these videos or ways we can make them better, it needs to be from the hierarchy that we're using rather than trying to argue for a different series entirely. But let's see. You think we ought to talk about this now or later on?
We can talk about that now. So something that people bring up a lot is kind of, I don't think our expectations are clear when it comes to representing power in gameplay. For instance, faster than light speeds. To represent that realistically in real time in gameplay is completely impossible. We're not denying that. But what we look for is like a sign that they tried.
For example, a good example is Sonic and the Wisp, the Cyan Wisp. Everything around it slows down, the screen goes black, you can see things not moving at that speed. You're looking at me like this isn't a good example.
No, I am.
Oh, okay.
I agree with it.
Great. Another example of gameplay that might work for something like this. All right, I'm going to cite a movie, but it would work in gameplay, is X-Men Days of Future Past, the Quicksilver scene, if any of you know it. Basically, everything around the world slows down while the character is moving at fast speeds, although it appears like normal speeds. That's a really easy way to show incredible speeds during gameplay. We're not saying you have to show a character moving at massively faster than light speeds to the point you can't even see them on screen, but if we're going to measure something at that general speed level, it needs to be consistent. And there's ways to achieve that. There's games that have achieved stuff like that. It's just a matter of perspective. We're not putting the expectation on any developer to somehow make insane movement speed fun and viable to play while having you move at that speed and everything else in real time.
And the Laser Wisp is another good example of a part of that we didn't quite hit on. We've talked about how we want to be able to measure things in the series. We want to try to put calcs on everything that we do, and you're not going to be able to get that from any game. You can't calculate faster than light speeds. Most games, I guess. Like Sonic, we could literally never calculate at faster than light speeds just by measuring the distance that he moved and the time that he did it. But the Cyan Wisp, even if we were to measure it and get way lower speeds, it demonstrates enough consistency that the intention was to portray light speed that we're considering that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that effort is made, it does overwrite these calcs. We're not just trying to use those to lowball things. But when there hasn't been any effort made, none of those boxes are ticked, then we're not going to be, we don't give it that much leniency at that point.
I also want to mention real fast, I'm seeing a lot of mentions in chat about the black hole or other specific feats, and we are going to get to every single one of those and why we did or didn't use them, or in what capacity we did use them. They're a bit later on our list. We're almost through the more meta stuff here, though.
What do we have next?
Probably either immeasurable feats or the creator statements.
I think let's go with those, because that'll be quick. Just basically, with that hierarchy, we have statements as being one of the least meaningful things that we can get. And that's just because, again, we have to see it. And we can't...
Both from characters in-game and even from creators using that only to contextualize what we see in-game.
Right. So, like, a good example of when these statements, like, upgrade a feat is Sephiroth's Supernova. My initial perception of that going through all the footage and everything was that at most the characters were enduring like the surface temperature of the sun. It feels implied by the cutscenes, and the actual damage from it just didn't seem to match the level of power you would expect from a supernova. But then there's so many creator statements backing it up, explaining how it works, things like that, that we feel comfortable treating it at a higher level. Whereas on the other hand, you'll have characters who, like, they have an attack that shoots, let's see, can you think of any examples of where a creator statement is just totally disregarded? I can think of a few, but they're for upcoming battles. I guess Sephiroth, those two.
Yeah, Sephiroth kind of.
Okay,
works.
so another one then would be Zero. He had a guide where it said, or not a guide, like an anniversary book or something, where it says that one of the enemies he beats, whose power he can get, can shoot absolute zero temperature attacks. Whereas in the game, what he does is shoot an icicle. And so that's like a really big contradiction, and with that we have to side with what's actually shown. Yeah, in that case, it's the priority is further up on the gameplay.
But yeah, that probably is a good example of that. Last thing, we only have a couple things to talk about before we get into a lot of specific feats, and I see you guys are really anxious to do that. We'll just get through these so that they're on record. They're things that people can look back on. First is when it comes to immeasurable feats. So there's certain things that we cannot calculate. For example, I'm trying to think of an example besides the one I want to use.
The
Link now. Yeah. What's an example that relates to like Sonic or a character that we've talked about?
One that I see brought up a lot, and we'll get into it later in more detail, is in Sonic Generations, where he runs so fast that he restores time and space to these little pockets of a dimension. They had been frozen in time, and him running through it has restored that. At a literal interpretation, you could argue that his speed itself is what is causing that restoration, and that's not a thing that happens in real life. So it's not something we can put numbers to in any way.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry. Guys, I just had a baby like a month ago,
Okay, so-
and I kind of zoned out.
So the point is...
Did you talk about Link? Or
No, you said you wanted to talk about Link.
I'm with you guys again. Okay, so essentially, like, there's things that we can't measure because it's fiction. Exactly, like Alamine, I'm sorry, my screen is super small. There's certain things that are fiction, things that we can't measure objectively, and so we don't want to throw those things out altogether, but it also comes to a point where it's basically just throwing a random number generator at it. We could say this thing isn't possible, we can't measure it, so this is way off the charts. It's infinite. But then you also get things like in Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, Link stabs the Master Sword through a barrier of darkness around Hyrule Castle, and it shatters that. I can't think of a single person who could tell me authentically from a good faith argument how much damage it takes or how much force it takes to shatter a barrier of darkness. It's not something that we can measure. It's immeasurable.
And some people are bringing up a good point. These are usually considered like hacks. They're things that don't fit into normal categories and are therefore considered like a separate ability. And that is true some of the times, other times it's not. Our point is more that when we state that something is immeasurable, we don't usually mean that it's so high we can't quantify it, and we're going to try and make a distinction between things like that and things that are either hacks or just they don't fit into any category that we can use.
So with that example we brought up specifically, we can get into it a bit more, but I will mention a few things now. So someone's saying this is an appeal to reality. Let's see, it's literally stated that it's his speed doing it. It's Sonic speed restoring space-time, and we're not doubting that. The thing is, there's no way to say how much speed it takes to restore space-time.
Like, they could say that it requires his speed to do, and that speed could be 30 miles an hour and still fit all that criteria.
Like, Back to the Future requires a very low speed for time travel.
Yeah. Or it could be literally infinite speed to, like, surpass how things work. The point is we can't actually put a number on it and be confident.
Right.
And to some degree, in several of these situations, we are trying to anchor it to reality to make it make sense. But again, that's just kind of a fundamental part of the series, is that when we try to analyze these characters, we have to have something to base them on, and when the story doesn't provide that, we use our own world.
Anyway, so the last thing, I think we should bring this up, guys. Or should we just get into this?
Yeah, let's just get into it. Do we want to talk about scaling though?
Yeah, we can actually use that as a source or to get into specific feats. I need to go get some more water, but would you talk about kind of our philosophy on scaling? And then specifically, we're going to tie that into an argument we see with the Chaos Emeralds a ton. That the Chaos Emeralds did X or Y, and so Sonic should be able to do X or Y.
Yeah. Okay, so to talk about scaling a little bit first, our rules, I believe, say no scaling. They might say that it's no scaling except in directly comparable circumstances, but the point is that it's not clear. It comes back to that philosophy we were talking about at the start, where we need to prove these feats are true from the ground up. And that holds true for scaling. It's just that scaling is much harder to prove. Beating a stronger character doesn't make you stronger than them. For instance, I could... Ink is way stronger than me. He knows how to fight, but if I get a surprise hit on him or a lucky hit on him in a fight, I could still take him out. But that doesn't make me better than him in any capacity. It makes me luckier, if anything. And that's a pretty low-stakes example, but it does apply even at higher scales. Stronger, like the really strong enemies in video games almost always have weak points, and then it becomes impossible to tell like how strong is the weak point compared to the rest of them. The point is that, like, when we're trying to scale, we have to have something that we can't deny is true. We have to have some undeniable situation where one stat is compared to another between these characters and say that they are equal. And that holds true even when the thing we are scaling them to is part of their kit. So talking about Sonic specifically, there are a lot of things that the Chaos Emeralds have done over the years, either in the hands of other biological entities like Shadow or Silver, or in the machines that Dr. Eggman built, or ancient machines like the temples in Sonic Unleashed. And they've demonstrated like incredible power. However, Sonic doesn't. He doesn't demonstrate that he doesn't demonstrate that level of power consistently or even ever. We've got the stopping the arc being the most impressive display of his chaos power. And anything beyond that, he just hasn't demonstrated the ability to use. A lot of people bring up that if you have, say you have a power source with unlimited power, that you should always scale to that infinite power no matter what, because you can't take a fraction of infinity. It's always going to be infinity. And that's kind of true, but our interpretation isn't so much that people get a fraction of their power as much as people have a capability to harness a certain level of power. And that's what we're measuring. Think of it like putting a water tap on the bottom of a lake. The water source is huge, it's massive, basically unending as far as the output is concerned, but that output is going to be drastically limited no matter how much water you want to push through. It has nothing to do with the size of the source. It has to do with the capabilities of the output.
So are we going Chaos Emeralds right now?
I was talking about power source scaling and mentioned the emeralds,
okay.
But yeah.
Should we get into the emeralds specifically real fast?
We can, yeah, if we want to start getting into some feats for those.
I think it's about time to start getting into feats.
Yeah, so we have a document. I'd like to go through it in order so we could keep track.
Okay.
But we can jump through and talk about the Chaos Emeralds specifically.
Yeah, let's go do that one real fast.
So I've seen a lot of arguments about the Chaos Emeralds and why Sonic should scale to them. There's the arguments about them moving continents, or destroying part of the moon, or scaling to Perfect Chaos, who is supposed to be able to destroy the world with them, or scaling to everything that Shadow can do with them, or what's the other one? Oh, the final Egg Blaster. People say the Emerald should scale to that because he was able to blow up stars without the Emeralds, and therefore the Emeralds have to be stronger because he still wanted them at that point.
Mm-hmm. And then the argument they make from that is give all of that power we've ever seen with the Chaos Emeralds to Sonic.
Right. And that is, again, what I was talking about. It doesn't actually matter how much power the Emeralds have or what they can do on their own, because what we care about is what Sonic can do with them. So Sonic has shown the ability to teleport. He's shown the ability to transform into Supersonic, cast Chaos Winds. In Sonic Battle, he had a few... or not Sonic Battle, Sonic Chronicles, he had a few Chaos powers in there too. But that's really it. Oh, and time travel in Sonic 06 with someone else's help.
Mm-hmm. Real fast while you think about that, I will point out I'm seeing a lot of ink drinks, hashtag ink drinks in the chat, and I will not stand for this kind of hate speech. I just wanted to make my position perfectly clear.
Great. The simplest explanation is the best. There's no lower showing of said artifact, so we have to assume the power of said artifact. I think that's talking about what we're saying, and the issue is that there is a lower power level of the artifacts, the Chaos Emeralds specifically.
Yeah, so for MJ versus the World, it sounds like you and I agree in principle that we shouldn't just take one source of the Emerald's power display and scale it to everything. It's just a matter of where we look and who we apply that to, if that makes sense.
Right. So anyway, there's a lot of arguments, but it comes down to, we look at what Sonic has done, and he hasn't done anything on the level of those strongest feats. I've seen a lot of people bringing up strong enemies that he's beat with the Chaos Emeralds, like Time Eater and Solaris. We do have more. Should we get into those now too?
We should just get to the top of the document, and then we'll get to it eventually. If we keep skipping around all over the place, we're not going to be able to do this in order.
The basic idea is, yes, we did consider those, but again, they haven't had the feats to show that level of power. There's a lot of flaws and inconsistencies in the story that makes them a little dubious to accept, and so there's nothing we can take to scale under how we're approaching the series.
Right. If you have questions about that, we'll get into it a bit later when it comes up in our document. I'm just so disorganized as it is. You guys here, I can hardly sentence it through a make. So we're just going to go in order of the document, and hopefully that'll get through all these questions. If at the end you guys still have questions for us, we'll make sure to go through them in a little bit more detail, either on the stream or a bit later.
Solaris is something a lot of people want us to talk about. So we should install. Well, I didn't get through it in the 9 pages that I annotated, so maybe we should do that now.
Okay.
Also, this document was put together by our mods and researchers by going through the things you guys submitted in the Discord, and also going through the common complaints scene in the YouTube channel. We can't get to everything because there's literally thousands of arguments for Sonic, but we're getting to as much as we possibly can. So with Solaris, specifically, the power level stated in the story for him doesn't match up. First of all, he hasn't displayed feats on that power level, but there's also like huge inconsistencies with assuming he has that power level. For instance, he's supposed to exist across all times, and the story of the game is trying to prevent him from being brought back into existence, and then failing to do that, erasing him for existence. And that isn't possible. I know you could say that it is if Sonic is like beyond those dimensions himself.
So, real fast, what's the issue with saying, well, you're saying that's impossible, that's just an appeal to reality, you're trying to put realistic stuff to video games?
The problem is that, again, we're trying to build things up from zero. And a lot of people will say that we're making too many assumptions to get rid of Solaris, but we aren't working in that order. We are trying to prove that Solaris is beyond time and space. And he isn't, because he's not around for the whole game. He isn't omnipresent.
Mm-hmm. So here's a couple points people are bringing up. For example, Solaris destroyed a universe via his presence, bruh. And also 327 timelines destroyed from his presence, bruh.
Yeah, and also Eggman states he eats dimensions for breakfast. That's where I hate the Eggman argument, because I hate getting into this, but Eggman just lies incomprehensibly all the time. Like, basically every other sentence out of his mouth is a lie. And regrettably, I thought this was a known character trait of his when I was doing the research, so I haven't compiled a document listing all of my examples, but, like, I don't trust anything that he says unless it can be proven, because it's so regularly.
Not to mention that that's just in general with the series as well. If they don't demonstrate something, we can't use it. Let alone when that person has a history of lying. But he does have a 300 IQ.
Also, Eggman got all of his information from like ancient legends about Solaris, which they're not even reliable. We can't even trust like ancient history in our world because it's always so biased.
So here's a few questions about that. Is if he's lying, is there anything going against his statement?
If he's lying
about him eating dimensions for breakfast, being omnipresent, all that, is there stuff going against that?
Proving that he is?
Yeah.
No, nothing. I guess so. He created like a
proving that Eggman would be lying.
If he is lying, is there anything proving that he's lying?
Are there things to point to him not eating dimensions for breakfast? Well,
so that's my point, is that Solaris is like the time god. He's supposed to exist across all times at the same time. But the context of the game is that the bad guys are trying to resurrect him because he doesn't exist, which can't happen if he was gone in this time. You kill him at the end of the game by going back in time to before he was born and blowing out the candle that became Solaris. So, like, there's just things that don't make sense for a being that exists in all times.
So something I see a lot is, why would Eggman lie? And there are a bunch of different reasons for a master manipulator like Eggman. One could be motivation for different characters, trying to get them on his side, things like that. But ultimately, whether or not he's a liar, it comes down to the hierarchy of how we interpret things.
And yeah, it needed to be proved even if he was a trustworthy source. And it wasn't proved. It was disproved more than proved. And starting from zero, starting from like building it up, proving an undeniable case for Solaris, there's just too many assumptions we have to make to have that happen.
Yeah. And once again, something I see a lot is the world was about to end. Why would he lie? Things like that. And like I just said, yeah, there's about.
I don't even necessarily think that he was lying in this as much as his information is
notoriously
often, it's unreliable.
But when it comes down to it, it's really not about Eggman himself. It's about the hierarchy of how we interpret things. So once again, you could use that to provide beats to Solaris, but that's just not the series. Arguing that is arguing a different character, essentially.
Yeah.
Any other points about Solaris before we move on?
There's going to be a million points about Solaris.
All right. We got to move on real fast. Should we take any other questions about this?
We could literally talk about him all night. The only other thing is that, yes, he did like pull people into this side dimension, and everyone was saying that the universe was under threat. But even if we assume that he had like eaten the entire universe right then and created this side dimension where people went to fight him, he still hasn't shown anything proving that he has universal durability. And that's really what would matter here.
Yeah. So there are things like Percival says in chat, the guide backs it up, but once again, that's the argument itself. I see where you're coming from. The argument doesn't work under these rule sets. It's messing with the hierarchy of how this works. So under a different rule set, that might work. But let's move on from Solaris to the next thing. Which is actually the first thing. Which, that's starting here, right? Not in the specific feats. Okay. So these are things about our research specifically. We're starting with stuff from our Discord server, including one from Matardis, which is something that we see a lot. So, allowing non-canon multiplayer info for Fox because he needed the feats, but not allowing Rob the same, or other characters, such as not allowing the Sonic Adventure 2 battle multiplayer special attacks for Sonic. Why did we do this? And there's a few different reasons. So the multiplayer for Fox is split up into two different things. If you look at Falcon versus Falco, that's our original intent in it. Is Star Fox Assault, the multiplayer functions basically off of the same damage system as the story mode, which we only see Fox in. That is, that's our best place to see durability for the characters. We have nothing else to do from there. Originally, we weren't going to get any weapons or things like that. And so the reason we did it, once again, there's statistics in game that hold up comparing one character to another.
Statistics, he means hold up as in we can measure that they're accurate. For what
Right.
it's worth.
So there's character stats, and we can measure they scale proportionally. The reason that we used the demon sniper or things like that is because I made a bad call. We shouldn't have done that. I can admit where we were wrong. I'm okay using the multiplayer to get their durability, things like that. I had kind of had it in my head that it's unlocked by doing multiplayer things, or it's unlocked by doing things in the story mode. But what it came down to is I kind of got caught up in the moment thinking they have all these they have all these feats that we're using, or we're able to measure their durability from story mode. And so looking at all these weapons here, these are super cool. It would be really fun to choreograph. In reality, none of these weapons are going to make a difference because the R-Wing's most impressive stuff is still its charge shot and its smart bomb. But that's the explanation for why Fox got the demon sniper, why Fox got a lot of stuff that they didn't end up using, like the firecracker barrel, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Things that are super cool. Kind of just because I personally got caught up in the choreography in my head, none of them make a difference in the battle. And in the future, we're not going to give multiplayer feats to other characters, meaning characters aren't going to get multiplayer specific weapons, abilities. That kind of explains why we didn't with Rob. That explains a bit why we didn't with Sonic.
For what it's worth, it would affect the battle slightly in that the Demon Sniper was one way that Fox could deal with Sonic even outside the R-Wing all on his own. Without that, he doesn't have that chance anymore. He's still durable
There's
enough.
an argument that the Plasma Blaster could, but once again, we could give that to him. It just hasn't shown the same power that the R-Wing has, despite it being implied to.
That's true.
So that's something we discounted for Fox because it didn't hold up to the series.
So with taking away the Demon Sniper, that would mean that Sonic could probably deal with him outside the R-Wing more often than we had initially calculated, but that's not going to be enough to take the match in every circumstance. And that's kind of how we approach it, is we think of the different strategies that people could use and how often it would help them win, how reliable it is, and try to match things up that way.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, and then I guess specifically for some of those other multiplayer feats or other sources like Rob or Sonic, do you want to touch on those?
Why we didn't use them?
Yeah.
Because we're not really ever supposed to use them. The reason we use them in Star Fox, once again, it's super measurable. We could see how one character compared to another thing, and the engine within that seemed, from the best that we could tell, lined up to the story mode. There are very little inconsistencies between them, and so we could see what Fox could endure in the story mode, bring that over to multiplayer, see that the other characters in multiplayer had stats on the screen that we could measure to scaling proportionally to Fox.
So would you say then the difference, Sonic Adventure Battle 2 has, or Adventure 2 Battle, has stats for each character as well? Do we want to draw the line then saying that we're fine taking like base characteristics and statistics like durability and speed for these characters, but not introducing unique abilities?
The thing with the Star Fox characters is there weren't any feats or anti-feats outside of that for the other Star Fox characters to suggest one way or another. Whereas with a lot of Sonic characters or a lot of other multiplayer characters, we can look to, hey, here they are not inside of a vehicle in the story. This is what they can endure. Whereas for characters like Falco, we just don't see that out of that one story mode. So that was the best assumption that we could make.
Then what about like Rob?
What about Rob?
He doesn't have feats, but he is in other games.
So Rob is in other games, and there's two super legitimate ways that you could take this. And I know that there were a lot of people who were upset, or at least a few who were very upset, that we used Rob's appearance as a peripheral to the SNES, or maybe it's just the NES, peripheral to the NES rather than his appearances in like WarioWare or things like that. The argument for why we ended up using the toy, that's how he's described in his trophies in Smash. That's how he's described a lot of different places. His moveset generally seems to be references to the games that he was a peripheral for. But ultimately, there were two different things, and that we could have gone either way. And admittedly, I went with the one that I thought was funnier and fit within our budget. So there were two ways we could have taken it, and that was the reasoning behind we went with the way that we did.
And Andex asks about how it could apply to like sports games showing statistics. I think it's the same situation. Like, I think we would basically say that these multiplayer things, they're kind of a secondary source for us. We won't use them when they contradict other evidence, but when they don't, then they're okay. So, like in a sports game, for the Mario franchise, there will be situations where some things from that might be acceptable, but not in the face of like overriding the other 30 years of history for Mario. 40? How long is Mario around? Forever.
At least 5 years.
5 years of Mario history.
Real fast, I will say, talking about black hole feats, because I've seen that come up. I don't know if you're talking to us or having a separate conversation in the chat. We didn't calculate black hole durability for Fox. Rather, we used it to contextualize other feats that we saw. He was described several times as going through a black hole, so while we didn't calculate what would he need to endure a black hole, we did say, okay, here's the creators trying to get him to go through something really, really powerful and durable in multiple different sources and multiple different games. So if he has some other crazy feat of durability, we can kind of compare it to what they're trying to do there.
Which is the same thing we did for Sonic,
right,
where he had feats that were way above anything else that he did, but felt consistent with how he's portrayed what his intended strength was, and so he kept them. Like, the arc feat would normally be too much for Sonic, or even his flying to the moon. But there's so much for how fast and powerful Sonic is that we didn't throw those out.
Right. And then amount of Hitchens Razor is so much. I don't know if you're talking to us or someone else. For anyone in the chat who doesn't know what Hitchens Razor is, let's see. You sent me the definition here. I'll go ahead and read it so I make sure I don't misinterpret. It says, the burden of proof regarding the truthfulness of a claim relies on the one who makes the claim. If this burden is not met, then the claim is unfounded, and opponents need not argue it further in order to dismiss it. So this isn't like a universal truth or anything, but it's essentially saying, I think with the context it's made for is, if someone's trying to make a feat for Sonic, or if someone's trying to make a feat for Mario, they can't just say, I've got this feat, disprove it. What it's intended to be used for is saying, we have this thing, or someone presents a feat or something, it's not to be considered unless there's enough information to back it up. Would you say I described that correctly?
Kind of. This is basically what we were talking about at the start, where we said that we kind of operate in the opposite direction than some people say to. We start characters at 0, and we are using Hitchens Razor to give them feats. But when most people say it, they use Hitchens Razor to say that the burden of proof is on, like, disproving something. But that's the opposite of how we are using it.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to detract in that too much. I just saw that coming up in the chat a lot. I wanted to make sure everyone's on the same page.
So next topic is we have flight and travel speeds require similar reaction and combat speeds in order to maneuver while approaching different objects. Saying they can only travel in a straight line and not be able to react that fast is false, as they would not be able to stop towards or turn around said object that they are approaching if they could not react at those speeds. And I think that's brought up mostly because of what we said about Sonic's speed, but it is kind of a relevant question for the series as a whole. I can kind of agree that reaction speed should be pretty similar, at least, to combat speed, or sorry, to travel speed, or combat speed, really, whichever's higher. But that doesn't mean that you can, like, actually act at those speeds that you can perceive and process things. So I don't think that scales through. I don't think someone's combat speed scales to, or travel scales to combat. Ink, you are more of a fighter. I feel like you have more of a position on this.
So in what context exactly?
So, Sonic can fly to the moon at, I don't know what numbers you gave, so I'm using the light speed, 16% of light speed, and therefore should be able to fight in combat at those speeds.
Yeah, so kind of the classic example people bring up is who's faster, Bruce Lee or Usain Bolt. Essentially meaning punching speed or fighting speed is way different than travel speed. Example, I'm a fighter myself. I do Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then do a bit of MMA between those two. There are people who can run really, really, really dang fast. And when you get them on the ground or when you get them in a arena, things like that, it's just, it doesn't apply. You have to work maneuvering around another person, which puts in a set of variables. If you're in a different environment, there's things that you got to go around. And I know this is fiction, it's not reality, and there's only so many things we can base it off of. But you ought to go over this example you gave here with the time travel. I think that's a good one, and then we should probably move on.
Okay. So my example is that if we say someone could fly to the moon at light speed, it would take them 1.3 seconds to do so. Even if only 1/100,000th of that time was spent braking or reacting to the travel in order to stop at the moon, it would still take them 2.5 miles to stop in that amount of time, which is far, and you could argue that maybe they would have even greater reactions than that, but I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption. But at any point, the more relevant comparison is that if that same person wanted to fight and avoid a punch in combat at his top speeds, if they wanted to move 10 feet out of the way to avoid a punch, they would have to react 1,000 times faster than they did to landing at the moon. And that's basically going to hold true no matter what assumptions you do for how long, like what distance it took for them to brake, or how long it took them to stop reacting to their travel speeds, because at really high speeds, like even the tiniest movements are going to take you super far. So they might be able to react and move that fast in combat, but unless they've demonstrated the control to be able to do so in a combat situation, it's not going to be a useful skill.
Right. Anyway, we should probably move past this. Oh wait, Stylish does have a quick point we want to bring up real fast, maybe like 20 seconds. Sonic is interesting because his main attack method is ramming into people.
Yeah, which is why we said that if he had a straight shot, it would be fine, because he's just ramming into them. But he's not like... he does have homing attacks, but those generally aren't very fast compared to what he normally does.
Right.
And given how uncontrollable he normally is at higher speeds, I don't think he has demonstrated the control.
And for the Cons 8, by the way, I saw you ask a few times. We do have your question in here. We haven't gotten to it yet. For your specific question here, it's just a matter of comparing what Sonic has broken, the durability of that, with the durability of the R-Wing. And we talk about that a bit more in our video. All right, next question. This one is from Gabe. Let me go ahead and hit the microphone real fast. Can you guys hear the music? Because this is probably a much different live stream if you can't hear the lo-fi.
The light speed attack is fairly conditional. Takes a while to charge. I think the charge went away eventually. But even with that, it wouldn't make a difference with Fox being so much faster.
You can't hear the music. I know Levi specifically is listening to this as a podcast, so... There was music? Oh, no. Did you cover Lunge's question? I don't think we've gotten to that one yet, have we?
We are on question 2, or 3
That's right
now.
We're making good progress now, though. All right. How's this? Bit better? Now you can hear it. Yeah, we're going to have to speed this up a bit, or it's going to be a 10-hour stream. Let's see.
Next one is by Gabe. It's just unfair and kind of biased to give Fox stuff in order to have feats, but not Rob. Like, I know that much more people care about Fox than for Rob, so they'd give Fox feats, which he can't actually use according to the rules, but totally poop on Rob while he's got some feats from commercials.
Yeah, so essentially, I just went over this one. We went through Star Fox for multiplayer durability because of very, very specific scaling circumstances with the way that lined up. But it wasn't fair of us to give Fox the Demon Sniper. We're having one of our animators kind of alter up the ending in a fun way, and I'm going to probably ask him not to use the Demon Sniper. Or at the very least, change it to a regular sniper and have it not do a killing blow or things like that. That's my bad very specifically. I pushed for that onto the team. And I kind of got caught up in the cool choreography of my head. But yeah, that's a good point. We used it for... scaling and durability. I think that's something a lot of people coming from good faith could say, yeah, that makes sense. I see why you would use that, but we shouldn't have used it for weapons.
Andix asks, Fox was said to be faster, but wouldn't that only apply to the R-Wing and Fox's reactionary speed? Couldn't Sonic kill Fox before he gets in the R-Wing? The answer is yes, and we considered that, but Sonic just isn't the type to like go all out and kill his enemies right away, so it wouldn't matter. And even if he tried, he's not actually strong enough to hurt Fox in base form. So Fox would definitely have the time to get in his R-Wing, even if he started outside of it.
Let's see. And then Fox also has a couple things that could complicate it, such as turning invisible, flying with a jetpack. And as I say those, I think those might both be multiplayer exclusives. Not the jetpack. Not the jetpack, but the invisibility, I think, is. That one is represented in Smash, but not in a convincing enough way that we should allow it in an animation. Which is disappointing because it would be cool, but yeah.
Is that what his up B is supposed to be?
Huh?
The jetpack is his up B?
I don't know what that is. It's called Firefox. That's never mentioned anywhere in Star Fox. But yeah.
All right, next category is feats that people feel like we didn't include. Just to talk about the category as a whole, we probably looked at every feat you can think of for both characters. We just don't have the room to talk about them.
I had a very boring and negative script with both characters where I basically went through every feat they've ever displayed and said, you know, with Fox, it looks like he's doing this, but actually with our series, he's doing this. And with Sonic, it looks like he's doing this, but with our series, he's actually doing this. And I recorded it, I had started editing it, and then I was like, okay, yeah, this sucks. I hate this. And that's why we reworked it to the point we didn't really do any debunks in the video. So there were a lot of things that we looked over, we didn't qualify, but we just didn't include in the video for the sake of having an enjoyable video.
All right, so the first one in this category is from Areedpar Blue. I'm sorry. So these are some gripes that I saw in the comments. Oh yeah, he just listed a ton of these, so we got a lot to go through from him.
Great.
Just compiling some of
This will probably
stuff.
cover a lot of them.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of do a lightning round because I don't think any of these are going to require a lot of detail. I know that people won't agree with our interpretations for all of these feats, but
it all goes back to the hierarchy and philosophy we said at the beginning. We can discuss it more in Discord if you want us to.
Yeah, so what about Sonic breaking the chain that held Little Planet in place? The chain isn't actually shown to be straining against the full planetary force that people say it is. Even if it was, it's likely that that would be taking most of the chain's strength, and Sonic would only need to push it over the edge in order to break it. So in both cases, we felt like it didn't really hold up as a destructive.
You wouldn't need to put the entire planet's force into it, especially when things like that are tense. It changes the force needed to break it.
Didn't Classic Sonic survive the explosion of the Death Egg in Sonic Forces? It's possible, but it isn't clear. You see him in the Death Egg. Knuckles says, "Get out before it explodes," and then it cuts to it exploding, and everyone cheers, which to me implies that he didn't get caught in the explosion. But even if he did, that comes out to less than at least his Supersonic top durability. It might change base Sonic, but that still wouldn't be enough to change.
Speaking of Super and Base Sonic real fast, I see a lot of people asking, why don't you do Hypersonic, Darkspine Sonic? We're going to get to that, I promise.
Yep. Isn't Sonic consistently able to keep up with the Egg Mobile? Because that flew to the moon from slightly further away. Basically scaling Classic Sonic to a slower speed than Supersonic, but still pretty fast, a lot faster than what we have. That is true if we assume the Egg Mobile is always going top speed when Sonic is catching up to it, which I don't think is reasonably proven. But even if it did, the speed in base wouldn't be enough to change the outcome of the match, and it would be irrelevant for Super. And someone asks, how did we get Supersonic flying to the moon at Mach 140? We didn't. We have that at Mach 140,000. It might have been a typo you saw. I don't know.
I didn't list anything in Mach, though. I'm not positive where it's coming
It must have been the Discord, maybe. I don't know. How did we get the Cyan laser to 926C? We didn't. We have it at light speed. Why is the light R-Wing 98,000C when the analysis said it's only 20% faster than the R-Wing, which is 66C? That isn't the speed we have it at. We have the normal R-Wing at 83C and the light R-Wing at 99C.
I'm not sure necessarily where these numbers are coming from. I don't think I gave a concrete measurement on anything. Oh, maybe I did in miles per hour.
I know that the 66C at least came from you saying it was like 66 billion.
Yeah, I said 66 billion, but not 66C.
So yeah, that's an issue for you giving miles per hour instead of light speed equivalents. I think that. Oh wait. No, these are still from him. So yeah, some things from the FAQ then.
Real fast, as you look at it, stylish. Is the music at a better volume now?
Was that a question to him?
Yeah. That was a question.
Okay.
Why do we use gameplay for Sonic but lore for Fox?
We used both of them for both of them.
Yep, in the hierarchy that we did.
So why would you think Sonic exaggerates his speed when he's pretty honest and been stated that he hates lies? Do you want to take this one since I've been doing all of them, or I can?
You did a lot more of this part of the research than
so
me. I know a
basically-
lot more of like the philosophy stuff, but Lemon put hundreds of hours of research into this.
Sonic, just he brags. I thought it was a defining character trait of him, but this question makes me doubt myself. Even if we assume that he was trying to tell the truth, though, like people are notoriously bad judges of their own capability, and even if we thought that he wasn't exaggerating, he still hasn't demonstrated the feats to back it up.
One of my favorite videos of all time. It's it's kind of along the same effect. Is it called the Dunning-Kruger effect, or is that something else?
I don't know.
Basically, people aren't good at estimating where they think they're at. It's an article by The Onion or a video. It's study finds that the average man is 4,000% less effective than in a fight than he believes he is. But yeah. Anyway.
Why is... Oh, wait. I get that Sonic scaling to the light speed dash seems iffy, but what about the speedometer in Sonic Unleashed? Makes the difference in speed between Sonic and the light speed dash pretty explicit, and is about as game mechanics as you can get.
Do you need some water, by the way?
That would be great.
Okay.
So the speed meter is... It seems to operate more like a scoring system. It gives inconsistent results from the same speed. You don't actually see, like, if your speed number doubles, you don't move twice as fast in comparison to anything. It just isn't consistent enough for us to trust. Why is only Sonic CD's race against Metal Sonic taken into account when in Generations they do a straight line race? We did take both into account, it's just that the Sonic CD one is the one that I see brought up more often, so that's the one I address in the FAQ. The other ones are still in a straight line, but have the same issues. That said, the next question is, I get the logic behind not using Metal Sonic's Mach 200 feet due to the lack of air friction, scaling Sonic to that is. But why is the fact that he reached escape velocity ignored? Which is a really good point that I overlooked, and Sonic should scale to that. So I would put his base form speed at, that's Mach 33. So that's a good comment, pointing at something we overlooked. Mods say something. In defense, he's faster than Lightspeed Dash in Generations. Yeah, so that's... Someone pointed that out somewhere else. The Lightspeed Dash, even if we accept it as being Lightspeed, there are games where he outspeeds it, whether that's Sonic Unleashed or other games where it feels like he noticeably slows down to use it. But once again, that's just a matter of it not... Like, there's just too many inconsistencies for it to hold up under how we approach these. You could say that the Lightspeed Dash is Lightspeed, but there's no evidence of that other than the statement. And even if we believe the statement, trying to scale Sonic's normal speed to the speed of the Light Dash gives us so many other issues with other enemies in the franchise, or background details, gravity, water, like...
Faster than light water, faster than light.
Right. I know a lot of people are going to say we should throw those things out for being like game mechanics or things that we couldn't explain. I'm naming inconsistencies right now, Groggy.
Yeah, this is a bit behind.
Fair enough.
But which is the point where in another series, yeah, that would in another series it would be a valid criticism. That's just gameplay, throw it out. Anyone making that argument, though, that doesn't hold up here.
Because the gameplay does take more priority than the statements.
Right.
Okay. Then we have Spartan asking, yeah, Sonic outran a black hole for 30 seconds in base form. That was from Sonic Colors. He did not... The black hole didn't exhibit properties of a black hole. I know a few other people brought up other black holes from other games, but it's the same point. They just haven't demonstrated the principles of a black hole. Even if we say that he did do it, though, that gives him light speed, which is still, like, not enough to change the outcome of the match. So it doesn't hold up under our rules, and even if it did, it wouldn't change anything. And
by the way, to reiterate one more time, we can talk about these in more detail in our Discord server. I know from the presentation of the video, it seemed like there were a lot of things we didn't catch as a research team. I promise you we did, and we're happy to talk about them civilly in more detail in the Discord.
Someone, TQ Anims says Link can go back in time with his ocarina, which, yes, he can.
What was the context?
That was it.
He just...
We have Zane saying, the issue here is Ink got research on Sonic completely wrong, and I want it redone. And Gabe says, me too. I mean, Ink didn't do the research. He weighed in a bit. I took care of most of it, had the research team helping with some of it.
That's kind of the general flow of how things go. I can't do everything myself. I do the writing, I do the recording, I do a lot of the editing, and I'm kind of, as a result of that, I end up being the face of the channel, but I wouldn't be able to do any of this without the research team, without the animators, and all of them. I know there's a lot of people who disagree with the research team. All of them did an incredibly good job, an incredible amount of work. There were 5 different animators. This was the most cursed animation we've ever had to make. There were so many things going wrong. There were some things like, why did we choose him shooting in the head? That was something because we had to get that animated 24 hours before we put it out. So I told the animator, this is what needs to happen. Do it in as cool of a way as you can. And I told him kind of the general things that would work. There's just a lot of things that require, there's a lot of things that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I have baby brain.
Well, I just wanted to mention, Ink did talk about how we have that workflow with all the animators. I'm the one who makes most of the final calls. I do get the input from the research team, and I take what they have to say into consideration. And we try to, whenever possible, come to a unanimous decision. But when there is anything left, I make the calls and I run them by Ink. So if you disagree with the research, I'm the one to blame. We have... how many people on the research team? 8? 7?
I think so.
That's
There's
a
a good
lot.
amount.
And they are on all different parts of the spectrum for how to regard all of our characters. So it's not even that the whole research team is over here saying that Sonic shouldn't get these feats. We have a lot of people putting in hours of work to try and prove to the rest of us that Sonic should be stronger. And we've considered it in a ton of detail. It just doesn't hold up to the philosophy of the series. And then we have, oh, here's Lunge's comment. I don't know if this is the one that Stylish was asking about before. Saying characters don't have feats to back scaling up, which in my opinion is a bad argument, because positive characters logically wouldn't destroy a planet or a universe. Do you want to take this one? Do you know enough about what he's saying or stuff?
I missed it. I'm sorry. I was handling some of the moderating stuff.
So basically, we need feats to back up scaling, but we don't need... like, again, it comes down to showing the effort to try and showing a consistent intent. I don't want to say intent, because that gets people confused with authorial intent, which isn't what I mean. But showing that the character is, like, genuinely supposed to be that strong is what's important. And so to have planet-level durability, you don't need to blow up a planet. Although Sonic did do that in Sonic X, so there's your point about about good characters blowing up planets.
But we weren't considering Sonic X.
Right.
We try to stick to the video games.
But the point is, if they beat an enemy who's supposed to be planet level, that enemy has to display planet level power or durability, specifically durability. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And that's what it all boils down to, is we're not expecting it. But also, it is going to hurt characters who are at planet level or above, because those feats are hard to display. But that is generally okay to us. That's a decision we're fine making, knowing that some of the very, very top end stuff is going to be brought down. Stop using game mechanics that contradict the lore. This also talks about how creator intent is bad. But we've talked about both these points already. We have the hierarchy we're using for feats, and that's not going to change. And we also don't try to use authorial intent for feats anyway. So, anything you want to add there?
No, I agree.
Trying to argue something based on author intent is an intentional fallacy, which is why we don't do it. By Gabe. Come on, if you set up the rules, you have to stick to them, because otherwise it is just crappy and would be unfair, and if the rules aren't getting followed, I, for my part, will no longer be willing to participate.
Well, I think what you're probably referring to is my choice with Fox and the multiplayer. There were also some concerns about Fox and the comics. I know I did do that scan that showed the Arwing creating that explosion on the planet, saying we're throwing it out because it was too much of an outlier. In reality, we wouldn't have used it at all to create a feat for Fox. We only use external things like that, such as comics or other alternative media to back up what we see in the games. We're never going to use stuff like that to create our own feats. Oh, I did use it to do Fox's Space Whale. There is a Space Whale in the first Star Fox game. It is only canonically his dad in the comics. I will not apologize for using that.
But we do, again, the rules aren't the best representation of the series. That's something we want to clarify and try to stick to better, because we know that we do need to communicate better about what we're actually doing with the series. Hopefully our conversation about our philosophy at the beginning will help to mitigate that. Gameplay should not be used to discredit guides, as the sole reason of guides is to clear things up that couldn't be explained or made clear in the games.
I can talk about this one. So, once again, that goes to our hierarchy. I understand where this argument is coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, if we want to make an argument for Smash Bracket, we need to stick to the rules of Smash Bracket. You're going to get people who say, yeah, but they say this in the statement. Yeah, they say this in the lore. And ultimately, it comes down to whether they're arguing for our series. A lot of people say, well, look at this stated in the game manual. Look at the statement from the creator. And in a different series, that would take precedent. But in Smash Bracket, it's just not an argument that works here. Once again, like we're seeing... never mind.
Okay.
It was Plato and Carl John.
Yeah, don't.
I'm sorry.
Don't use, by Luigi, don't use any Paper Mario feats for Mario characters, don't use Archie or movie feats for Sonic, and don't use Jesse's for Minecraft Story Mode items or feats for Steve, and etc. We do try to stick to that as much as possible. Some of our characters are composite, like we composited Classic and Modern Sonic, which by some games they're the same thing, and by some they aren't. For the most part, we do try and keep characters, different versions, as separate as we can.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right. So Nick says wants to bring up the topic of not making up unfair matchups like Ganondorf versus Isabelle.
Oh, I can take this one too.
Meta Knight versus Marth, he thinks, and Rob versus Lucina, he thinks. Sorry, he doesn't remember which Fire Emblem character is which.
So there's a lot of matchups that seem like stomps, and a lot of them legitimately are stomps. We anticipated Sonic versus Fox to be a stomp in Sonic's favor. There's a lot of things that just don't seem evenly matched, and there's a reason for that. If we had only the super strong characters fighting the super strong characters and super weak characters fighting the super weak characters, it would make for more interesting round one matches, but then you would end up with something like Sephiroth or Mewtwo versus Olimar in the final round. So in interest of having more interesting battles in later on brackets as hype is building up, that's why we did the matches that we did.
Several people asked, didn't Sonic run fast enough to restore space-time in Generations? Why wasn't that included? So this comes down to not having enough evidence to prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt with how we're approaching things. We aren't trying to disprove things, we're trying to prove them, and this is just so vague that there's not a compelling reason that we can't ignore it. And that's what it boils down to. There's ways to explain it without saying that Sonic needs absurd levels of speed.
Arrogant Prince has a really good point here, actually. I guess most of the disagreeers, myself included, don't agree with the rule set. And that is absolutely true. Like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of different ways to argue a versus battle. And ultimately, as someone who wasn't part of the versus battle community, I still don't necessarily consider Smash Bracket as part of the versus battle community, just because we vary so differently that I would feel disrespectful coming in with our different rules and saying, this is part of your community now. Like I said, I was just someone who had a project that I always thought would be super cool to do and would be really cool to make. And I thought of what kind of rules and hierarchies I think would be really fun. I talked about that with Lemon and a few other people. So what we have is really different than what a lot of people are used to, such as using gameplay or things like that. And that's because it wasn't necessarily shaped by that. Even when it comes down to things like the calculations or assumptions behind what we do, it's different than the Versus community. So you see planetary level, outer universal, things like that. Those just aren't things we use. The math behind them isn't stuff we use typically. It's something very different. And so trying to argue the same character that performs stuff there would perform the same way here, even if you take the exact same feats that you allow, would likely be calculated differently here. So once again, I totally understand why someone would disagree with the rule set, and that's because under different rule sets, you'd be absolutely right. For example, under Versus Battle Wiki, or Death Battle even, there's zero chance Fox would ever come close to Sonic. But with the hierarchy that we use, with the way we interpret feats, it's just personally how I have fun with it. It's how I get passion out of the series. It's my dream project. It's something I really enjoy doing. And that's what fuels it. We're not trying to match any pre-established thing. We're not trying to be unique for the sake of being unique. It's just how I personally enjoy making the series.
And, I mean, it would be ideal if we could come up with some rule set or interpretation that made everyone happy, but that's completely impossible. So we're going with the one that energizes us, that we have fun with. And it sucks that it's not for everyone, but it's the best we can do. And I'm sorry that it doesn't mesh with your...
Real fast for the record, though, I get why it doesn't mesh with everyone. Especially if I was part of the Versus community, I spent the amount of time and effort that people do on the Sonic pages at different wikis or forums like that. I'd be really freaking pissed off if someone came in and just threw everything out of the window, which in some capacity is what we're doing, starting from zero. But well, like I said, I get that. That's why I try not to say we're part of the Versus Battle community. Even though we talk about Versus battles, I don't want to crap on all the hard work other people have done. Because people really have done an insane amount of work, even if we don't come from the same place, and I don't want to diminish that.
Yeah, like, I've seen a lot of people calling us ignorant, and, like, honestly, it's true compared to the people who dedicate their lives to this. I've spent at least several hundred hours on this match. But there are people who have, like, dedicated every day of their life for years to it, and I can't come close to that level of knowledge, no matter how much I learn. I can just come close enough that we feel like the team has gotten a good picture of the character. It'll never be enough to make the people dedicating years happy, but it's the best that we can do.
And it's just different. That stuff isn't usable under how we chose to do the series.
Right.
But anyway, that's a side beat. We're getting to specific YouTube comments now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. We got a few more of these to go through.
A lot.
Kind of do rapid fire.
Yeah,
again.
so didn't Sonic handle the black hole in colors? Yes, we've talked about that one. It doesn't really meet our criteria for a black hole.
Just like the one in Star Fox didn't.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but what?
Ink, you look like mumbo jumble.
I don't want to be rude, but isn't Super Sonic untouchable in his form? If that's true, then it wouldn't matter how fast the R-Wing is, since he wouldn't be able to hurt him. Yes, he's generally shown to be invincible, but first of all, that has limits in the game, and second of all, even if it didn't, we would still apply the limits of Sonic's highest durability.
The reason that we do that is if something's shown invincible in universe, rather than saying it's invincible to everything, we need to take what it's actually endured and use that as the limit. An example is in Pikmin, there's an enemy, I think the final boss in Pikmin 3, who's invincible to all but a few very specific attacks from Olimar. And it would feel really lame to take fans of Supersonic or Hypersonic and say, yeah, Hypersonic might be able to beat all these characters, but can he beat the invincible 3-inch tall Pikmin boss? I don't think so. Just because it's never endured anything on the same level. It's not fun for characters of either series to just have them or give them infinite durability.
We haven't had a good point to clarify how we're handling durability, but we did settle on a system that we're using internally at least. Generally, we look at the minimum consistent level that they've displayed for durability as the threshold that needs to be met for them to take damage. The maximum level of durability is their sort of health bar, and then when they have invulnerability, that maximum level becomes the threshold to damage them. I have no idea how that stacks up to what people normally do, but without it, it feels like we just don't have a consistent way to handle, like, especially with the Arwing, you have it enduring teratons of TNT and also, like, pounds of TNT. There's a really, really wide gap. And anyway, so it's just a difference in how we do it, I think, but it is how we're going forward.
I think it's more fun.
Smashor says that Sonic has flown past the stars as Supersonic no less than twice. He's hundreds of times faster than the Arwing easily, and Supersonic should be comparable to his own power source, which can move parts of the Earth back into place. So we've talked about the power source thing earlier. As for Sonic flying past stars, I've looked at those instances. They didn't meet our criteria for holding up. There were too many problems. Like, the one I see shared the most is Sonic flying towards the moon or some other large object in space, and along the way he passes things that look like stars without that big object getting any closer. So that doesn't feel like he's traveling at insane speeds.
Unless you're saying there's all those stars in between.
And again, it's just a matter of we want to make less assumptions to prove that something is happening. And these ones require a lot of that.
Yep.
This is talking about a lot of speed feats. We've talked about the speed meter in Unleashed. Talking about null space in Sonic Forces, he enters and leaves through a portal, so it's kind of irrelevant how fast he goes in there. He caught the Cyan Wisp, which he did while it wasn't a laser, and they're far slower when they're not a laser. And then he was moving in Time Eater's Limbo World. Okay, I see a lot of people bring this up. In Sonic Generations, there's this white limbo world where everything is frozen in time except for Sonic, and he moves throughout it. Time doesn't exist there, so people say that he has infinite speed because he's moving in a place with no time, and therefore his speed is infinite, because that's distance over time. Unfortunately, he doesn't always exist in that limbo, and if he did, other people who could move around in it would also have infinite speed. So it doesn't really matter to any other instance. Someone said that if we are deleting comments, it makes them think something is going on behind the scenes. We don't do that.
There is one comment I deleted. It was my own. It was on the alternate ending video of Sonic versus Fox. I was saying if we get to a certain like threshold and a certain view threshold that we would do an alternate ending where Sonic wins in an extra cool way. We are still doing that with that same threshold. The issue I was having is it seemed like a lot of fans of Sonic were interpreting that as manipulative or exploitive, and other people were thinking that we were overturning the results of the bracket. And I didn't want to misguide people or disappoint people, so I went ahead and I went ahead and deleted that. It just felt like it was causing more problems and setting more people up for disappointment. If you're noticing comments not pop up, YouTube does have a toxicity filter and also has a spam filter, and those can be tripped off by some really weird things. But I don't go through and delete comments. I think I've deleted 2, and they've both been my own.
This is a long argument covering the issues with the FAQs.
I can read through it if you want to rest your voice.
Sure, that'd be great.
So this is from Groggy. Wow, the FAQ is just full of lies. Basically an excuse to lowball Sonic at this point. Calls people hypocritical for believing in the Lightspeed dash, barely does any research and glosses over multiple feats and says Sonic doesn't scale to Solaris since he doesn't show any power to be scaled. By that logic, any universal or multi-universal characters shouldn't scale. Your rule set blatantly isn't that good because you're going to have a hard time with characters like Kirby. We're never going to have a hard time with Kirby. Oh, man. Anyway, you'll understand in a bit. And other characters. Only allowing measurable feats creates more difficulty for scaling, and I can see that's what happened here. Also, why did you show more feats for Fox and favored him? You made him break one of Smash Bracket's rules on purposes over the sole purpose of he is hurting for feats. If we're allowing multiplayer feats, why not give that same treatment to Sonic? Sorry. In the research section, there is a clear headcanon being used as the person who made this FAQ said that Supersonic wouldn't have a time limit in some of his fights. while having one in others, which is complete doo-doo. This is already becoming worse than Death Battle. I really hope you do a rematch because you clearly paid more attention toward Fox and used multiple NLF abilities for him.
No limit fallacies.
No limit fallacies abilities for him, while ignoring multiple base feats for Sonic, and only showing a handful of feats for Super. I had a lot of faith in this series, and it basically died off with this video. For the record, that was way less mistakes I've ever made reading through anything for any script I've ever done.
That is true.
So yeah, we've covered a lot of that stuff. A lot of it comes down to just not agreeing with our rule set, not agreeing with our interpretations. Like I said, we had a lot more in the script for both characters. The issue is because Sonic had so many more feats, a lot of it just sounded like debunks or ragging on Sonic, which we don't want to do. Even things like the fake out ending, where it seems like we were giving Fox a super cool way to come back. Sonic won that up until like a few hours before we were supposed to post the video, and that's why we had to delay it a week. We just thought it would be cool to extend the animation a bit further, show Super Sonic, because we didn't think that Sonic would be able to beat him in base form. Yeah.
There are a few things in there that I did want to touch on. So we have showing more feats for Sonic. Feels like we favored him. In reality, we had dozens of times more feats for Sonic than we did for Fox. If it felt like we presented more for Fox, it was just because people are less familiar with him, and more familiar with Sonic and where he's at. So it's just easier to get across our interpretation of Sonic than it is for our level of Fox.
I've actually only ever played like one half of a Star Fox game before doing this video, whereas I grew up with Sonic. The first internet forum I was ever on, I don't know if it exists. It was for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. It was called like Chow Hippo Tank. Maybe Sonic fans know if that exists, but it was like a lot of random info about chows, and some person on there convinced me that you could make your chows friends, or you could make them enemies, or convince them that they're bullies to other chows. And I spent so many hours. Now it sounds like I have a bias against Sonic because I'm salty about this. That's not it. I'm just upset about that form.
But
anyway,
a chow would have won.
A chow would have won. What could
Sonic
do to a
chow? Okay. Also, we talked about the multiplayer stuff here. We talked about, there was one other thing here. I thought maybe there wasn't. Maybe we talked about that already. Okay, moving on. Nutlord says, also, what about the Wisps? There are a lot that can easily defeat Fox. If Sonic can get Fox out of the R-Wing, he can use the Cyan Laser Wisp or the Black Hole Wisp. Don't forget Sonic Battle. In that game, Sonic has abilities like healing or one-shots. So we did consider the Wisps. None of them made a significant factor. It was just kind of hard to represent in the video, especially since we did the scripting for that video like a billion years ago, wherein our research just wasn't as good. We kept improving it, and at that point, we didn't have time to put in all the references.
Which is why I had to
the
be
new stuff
delayed so much.
The Sonic Battle stuff, he had healing in the video. It wasn't relevant in the fight, but he had it. And his one shot
He looks so funny when he does it.
I hate it. He like hula hoops in a creepy way. The Ichikoro Gauge was also considered, but it doesn't just one-shot people or ignore abilities. The whole point of that game is you're like getting points on people. You have 10 KOs in a round, but they're not literally knockouts. I don't know what they're meant to represent, but it wouldn't just one-shot a character, just like it doesn't one-shot a character in that game.
Do we mention Hypersonic in this? I see it coming up in the comments a lot.
Yeah, we can address it now. There's not much to it. Basically, okay. Hypersonic is questionably canon, even if we wanted... Well, we do want to use it because it's cool. But it doesn't have feats. And even if it had feats, it requires like an extensive... I don't want to say ritual because people have a really distinct mind of what... or picture of what that looks like in their head. But he can't like do it at will. There's a decent argument that it can't be used ever again, especially since it hasn't.
If it was something that can't be used ever again, we still potentially would take it depending on the context.
Yeah. Like we included some stuff from Black Knight, but anyway, it didn't have anything to matter in the outcome. Mm-hmm. We were planning to actually use it in Sonic's later rounds because it's cool, but now I think he'll use it in the loser bracket rounds because that's cool. You should read the next one.
Okay. Let's see. Is it Omega Records?
Wait, is it? Yes.
I don't really know how I feel about vehicles being part of a fighter, especially when it's mass-produced and not unique to the character, like the R-Wing. If it's not a character power, or it's not a character power-up, but an entirely different mechanism, not special to that character. And it would scale to anyone who could teleport in it, freeze time to the same power level, Chaos Control can do both, and have changed the flight. Mewtwo's teleportation, Pneumonia's faster...
Don't worry about that one. That's a spoiler for people.
Okay. Kirby's Warp Star could get them in the cockpit. So do they get the same boon as the R-Wing? Or can they not get into it because it's theirs? So characters could feasibly get in the R-Wing. We've talked about the possibility of that for others. The reason we include it is because...
you can't get an accurate picture of Fox without the R-Wing.
He has the R-Wing in almost... He doesn't have it in Adventures, does he?
He does have it in Adventures.
Gotcha. But also, even when it comes to R-Wings, there's different... even when it comes to R-Wings, there's different R-Wings for each character, but things like that.
Yeah, so he does have a special one. We even included, like, with Falco versus Falcon, Captain Falcon, we had 2 scenes where the R-Wing, like, the vehicles were stolen and used. So someone relying on equipment is kind of a weakness that can be exploited. So yeah.
Dislikes do help with algorithm. That's true, but that's not why we did it. We had Sonic winning, like I said, several times throughout the animation, which is why there's so many parts where it seems like it ends. I saw people say, I couldn't tell who was going to win, and that's because we couldn't either. But yeah, that didn't have anything to do with it.
That's one Sonic guy says, to remind all of you about this rule set crap, it's just a bunch of statements with no proof. Literally, if you look in the section which talks about Supersonic, they say Supersonic doesn't scale to multi-dimensional threats for absolutely no reason other than my headcanon. It's sad, man. We do not have proof for our rules, I suppose. I'm not sure what that would mean. It's just how we're approaching the series. But you're right, we operate things in a different way than you're used to.
Mm-hmm. And real fast, to the moderators, Wind, if people don't understand the rules or are arguing against it, that's fine. You don't need to get after people for that unless they're being toxic. If people are arguing for a different rule set, they're not arguing the same series, it's not going to be convincing, so you don't have to worry too much about it.
That guy also says, your FAQ is just a justification to downplay Sonic even further. Stop using it as a reason to disregard evidence presented to you by people who are knowledgeable on Sonic because you clearly aren't. The FAQ is just us explaining
Get roasted.
Our reasoning. We haven't tried to use it as a justification for anything. It's just, this is what we have thought of some of the most common things that we've been asked. We do listen to people who are more knowledgeable than us, even if we don't take away the same interpretations as they do.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. The entire thing... Is that the next one by Laser? Yeah. So by Laser, the entire thing was made by Sonic haters. Come on, there's no way that the people who wrote this are this ignorant as to what Sonic can do. Even showcase-wise, I only need a few cases, just to say that you purposely rigged this battle. Once again, not Sonic haters. We definitely knew what Sonic could do. There are just things that didn't hold up in our... There's just things that didn't hold up under our rule set. Once again, I see a lot of people saying Sonic would beat Fox so easily, and that's true depending on your hierarchy of how you interpret things. But once again, if you need to argue who wins, you have to do so under this rule set. Otherwise, like I keep saying, you're arguing for a different series.
Okay, this is another really long one.
Do you want me to read it so you can rest your voice?
I got it, because I'm just going to speed around these. So, the animation was good, but God, the Sonic research was so lame. Starting with Omega Scan.
You put so much disappointment into that word, you really captured it.
It looked like he was disappointed.
It did.
Starting with the Omega Scan, why doesn't it count? Literally in the same game, he can go massively faster than light in super form against Nega Mother Wisp to have stars buried in the background, or blurred in the background. So we talked about the Nega Mother Wisp. I don't think I named her. That's the one. I don't buy the argument for that being faster than light. You're flying past stars towards the moon or something. The Omega Scan is a scan where Omega says about Sonic. Omega is like a robot who is supposed to be very smart and reliable. He says, wow, how is he this fast? At this rate, he'll exceed light speed. And then Sonic says, that's small time. Again, it needs to be shown, even if we fully believe the statement, of which there are a few issues with that.
We got into that a bit earlier. By the way, Sona the Thunder Hedgehog, thank you so much for enjoying the animation. Research is just understandable. Like I said, it comes down to your interpretation. There's a ton of effort put into the research, but once again, it comes down to hierarchy or how you interpret needs.
This is the same thing about the black hole in Sonic Colors. He said the strength part was all right. The Mach 3 speed, geez, since Sonic Adventure, he can move at the speed of light with the light speed shoes for the attacks. As for someone who uses, or some who use the speed system of Sonic Unleashed, we talked about the speed system. The light speed dash and attack are very situational, even if you can use them, and even if you got that all of the time, it wouldn't have changed the outcome for the battle. Supersonic, let's see, just in base form, he can destroy big rocks, and in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, meteors just push him back in the Doomsday Zone. In super form, he can frickin' explode the Eggman's big ships like nothing just by flying into the intro of Sonic Unleashed. So yes, Sonic has destroyed impressive objects, and we measured those.
Should I pull up that ship specifically, or is
if
that...
you want to? So like he's destroyed really big meteors. It's just that the durability of the R-Wing is still greater because the R-Wing is nuts.
That's something I see is Sonic's destroyed airplanes or Sonic's destroyed spaceships. Not all spaceships are built the same. Fox has beaten mammals before.
And it's not even like it's made of some really durable material. It's got like fancy shielding technology, and that's what makes it so strong. And it's mostly strong against like single hits. Weak hits bring it down.
Yeah, that's
quick.
the biggest. I didn't mention that in the video. I had it in the original script and had to cut it for time. The R-Wing is impressive for certain things, such as single hits. It can take a ton of force. But its biggest weakness is prolonged hits, especially if it can't get away for long enough to repair itself. For example, you see on the planet Solaris, the planet Solar, the temperatures are hot enough that it slowly wears it down. So that was one of the wing conditions we had for Sonic, is if he could hold on to the R-Wing, he could potentially wear it down with chaos energy, because Sonic is just perpetually putting out this energy. He theoretically doesn't even need to punch something. If he can just touch it, the energy's going to hurt it.
And he could honestly do it pretty fast, and it was a reliable win condition for him, just not reliable enough to take the whole match.
Right. Let's see, where does he fly through?
It's close enough right now.
Okay, that scene where he gets trapped by Eggman is so dumb. Okay. Alright, you ought to see this now. Let me bring this over. So this is the scene they're talking about with the spaceships, right?
A little bit after this, but yeah. Alright, you're good.
Cool.
So,
let me go back a bit for the context. So they're flying through this ship. You can go ahead and...
Yeah, I mean, the argument is that in this scene, Sonic is destroying a lot of these ships, and therefore should scale to whatever it takes to destroy these ships. But, they're destroyed by, like, a huge amount of explosions that happen in a chain reaction. So whatever Sonic is doing to them is not... Like, it's not one-shotting this ship. He's not scaling to the destruction of this vehicle.
Mm-hmm. He could be triggering something, but let's say he did scale to this. It wouldn't be even close to his most impressive feat.
Yeah, that arc is nuts.
Yeah. Anyway, that's that. Let me switch over to...
And then talk about the form that defeated Perfect Chaos, Negative Mother Wisp, G Emerald, and multiversals like Solaris and Egg Wizard, along with Blaze. And a simple explosion to deactivate the transformation is a bit weird. It is weird, but it wasn't a simple explosion. The Smart Bomb is absurdly strong. It's just well above what Sonic was able to deal with. I would agree with you if we didn't have the numbers to back up how crazy it was. Not much more to say about it.
Originally, we didn't. That was one of the reasons we had Fox flying into space and getting hit through the moon, is we just didn't have those numbers on the Smart Bomb or things like that. And then I went to edit the video and put it up, and I went to get footage, and I was like, oh, crap. We missed a lot for Fox. Anyway. You want me to read this one, or you want to? So, Wish Bush Wash Bosh says... Great video, but like 90% of the comment section, I still think Sonic should have won. Particularly, what I want to highlight is in the game Sonic 4, episode Metal, there's a cutscene where Sonic flies from Earth to Eggman's base in space in around 15 seconds. In the cutscene, they gave a number from where Metal Sonic was to this base, around 300 billion. Now, there wasn't a unit of measurement for that number. However, if it would have been either kilometers or miles, because anything else wouldn't be enough distance or would be too much distance, considering it had to be in the same galaxy, I've seen multiple calculations that would put this around 700 to 1,000 times the speed of light, which Sonic scales to Metal's. I know that there's probably a lot of other comments typing comments like this one. I just wanted to type this because I think it fits into the rules you have for Smash Bracket, considering that Meta Knight performed another feat like that in his episode. If you read the end of this essay that I typed on my phone, thank you. Edit, some people might say Sonic 4 isn't canon because I never got to the planned third episode, but they also used Star Fox 2 for multiple important feats, which was cancelled for Star Fox 64, which was the series reboot.
Yeah, so we basically talked about this one already. He had some more details. I addressed this more in the FAQ. Mods, I don't know if you have that. It's pinned on the YouTube video if you could link it.
What is?
The FAQ. Because I go into more detail here. Basically, our numbers came up really different. It's not that impressive, even if Sonic scales to it.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes back to, like we said, we just have different calculations behind stuff.
The Lego Admiral Akbar says, uses Star Fox comic, but doesn't use Sonic comics, doesn't use Hypersonic, Supersonic is invincible, he didn't use Wisps or power-ups. Okay, so Wisps and power-ups were considered. We've talked about Supersonic's invincibility and Hypersonic, so I guess the Star Fox versus Sonic comments, if you want. They would be in the same situation. I guess we didn't talk about the Sonic comics, but they would be in the same boat where they're not going to be creating feats for Sonic, just like they didn't for Fox. So even if we used them, it wouldn't have changed anything.
All right, I think we're near the end. We got two more.
Oh.
That third one is just the first one. So this one is from 4thCons08. I know he was in this chat earlier. I told him specifically I'd answer this question, so I hope he's here to see it. I think we've talked about most of it, but I'll read through it because he was very friendly. He says, all right, I want to have a friendly debate, so please answer. I just found out that in the Sonic Unleashed manual, it says that Sonic is faster than light, which is proven by the light speed dash, where Sonic dashes forward at the speed of light. Stop me if you have anything to say on any of these, because it's a long comment.
I have looked through. I don't know if there's a different comment talking about the light speed dash in the manual. I will say the thing that most people share with me from the Sonic Unleashed manual isn't actually from the Sonic Unleashed manual, but I don't know what he's referring to specifically here, so that might not be the issue.
If that's not enough, listen to this. The laser is the fastest thing on our Earth, and it's able to travel at more than 670 million miles per hour, and Sonic has dodged several lasers. So the assumption here is this seems like a laser. Lasers on our Earth travel at this speed, so it's probably traveling at this speed in their game. It just doesn't work with how we do the series. Everything we see in the game, we measure how fast it's going, if it's in a cutscene, if it's in gameplay, rather than assuming things are at the speed of light, unless, once again, it shows very deliberate intent to get it there. One more thing. Once scientists put a clock on a plane traveling at light speed and compared it to another one fast enough to the point that when he went backwards and forwards in time with no difficulty. I skipped a line. That explains why it's so confusing. Once a scientist put a clock on a plane traveling at light speed and compared it to another to run fast enough to the point where they went back and forward in time. Oh no, it didn't. With no difficulty. That confirms that Sonic was able to travel way past the speed of light, which is way faster than the blasts from Fox's R-Wing, proving that Sonic is faster than the blast. I'll let you take that one.
That point specifically?
Yeah, so we know what you're talking about. Humans haven't made anything close to the speed of light as far as an aircraft. They've kind of beat the speed of light by slowing a beam of light down in carbon, or was it CO2 or dry ice, something like that. So we haven't done that. We haven't even gotten close to speed of light, but I know what you're talking about. You can take it from there.
Start reading the comment. Which sentence did you
Basically saying that Sonic is way faster than light because he sees time differently.
I don't think that's the end of his point.
Gotcha. Oh, but because of this, he's way faster than the blasts from the Arwing.
Right. The blasts at the R-Wing's top speed are also faster than light, so...
Right. Also, I saw Groggy ask, yes, we are going to get to the debunk video once we finish this. It's not super long, and a lot of it is what we covered here.
Okay, so...
Let's see. Let's say the Arwing was able to hit him. This one I don't quite understand. Knuckles' strength is relative to Sonic's, and since Sonic CD Sonic was a speed, that means that Knuckles can lift way more than millions of metric tons, and Sonic has tanked several of Knuckles' punches, so the Arwing would have little effect. I'm not sure I get what you're getting at. But here's one. Super Sonic can simply teleport away from the Arwing. That is something that he did in the animation. He just couldn't keep up. He can also use Chaos Control Blast to completely stop it, and then use the Cyan Wisp to escape. Did we talk about both of those?
So, the Chaos Control is... they're talking about the time stop, which multiplayer not using it. We shouldn't have used the Demon Sniper. So that's... It doesn't change anything without the Demon Sniper anyway.
Yeah. And Groggy, yes, we can talk about both of those. All right, then I think we're on the last one before the debunk video.
All right.
If you'd cover it real fast, I have to use the rest.
Yep. Gigano Terror says, okay, the research in this was very, very bad and wrong for multiple reasons.
Loser.
I know. Sonic easily stomps the whole verse in his base alone. But the editing and animations were nice, I know that. But what ruined it is how awful the research is, to the point where I doubt that the researchers even researched Sonic's feats correctly. When you have feats such as Emerald Splitting Planets, Arc Piercing Celestial Bodies, Stars in Case, Base Sonic scales, by the way, the final Egg Blaster, capable of obliterating more than at least tens of stars in one attack, Supersonic scales above, by the way, due to Eggman using the emeralds to power his machines up and calling them the ultimate power, at a time where it took place some years after battle. Wisps stopping Planet Buster black holes. Dark Gaia Awakening, simple enough. I think that's Egg Salamander and Egg Wizard, capable of merging whole universes. And Solaris being capable of destroying multiple universes and timelines for lunch, and many more. These are just a few examples. Overall, if it wasn't for the terrible research, this would have been more acceptable and nice. Noting that if this was just for fun, it would be tolerable. But downplaying Sonic to the levels of freaking Island shows how bad the research is. I have no hate against any of the researchers, but they did, once again, a very awful job at their work. Honestly, I'll get into a few of these points here, but again, it's just a matter of us approaching the series differently. I know that rubs some people the wrong way, but it means that a lot of what is normally considered acceptable isn't here. So we have, let's see, Emerald Splitting Planets. We've talked about why we don't think Sonic would scale to that power source. Arc Piercing Celestial Bodies, stars in this case, and I know it blew up the moon. Again, it's a totally different mechanic. Sonic hasn't shown that he can do anything on that level, even if it's powered by emeralds. The final Egg Blaster, capable of obliterating stars. Even if we don't think that's an outlier for Eggman, Sonic shouldn't scale to that because it didn't even have emeralds in it, and the emeralds do such different things than pure destruction that it makes sense that Eggman would want them in the future. Wisps stopping Planet Buster black holes. They don't output anywhere near that level of power, and it required like 1 million of them.
At least through our hierarchy of what we've seen. There's some people who could imply that, but with how we interpret feats, it doesn't hold up.
Dark Gaia's Awakening. I go into Dark Gaia in a lot of detail in the FAQ. Egg Salamander and Egg Wizard merging universes. They also had an entirely different set of emeralds they were using to help with that. And I think one of them had like a scepter or something that was even beyond that. But the point is, even if they haven't demonstrated feats saying that they have the power, the durability or attack power physically on that level that Sonic should scale to it. And we've talked about Solaris. And that's it.
All right, so there's only 2 things we have left.
Oh, wait, sorry. There was one more from Andix that I forgot to put onto the doc. And that was the only person talking about Fox's feats. The idea is that, so for Star Fox 2, we have the map that we measured Fox's speed from. The scale and size of the planets on the map is kind of funky. It doesn't make it good for using to determine distances. And he's arguing that the perspective could be such that we're seeing a missile in the foreground and a planet way in the background, so the actual distance traveled isn't equal to interplanetary distances.
So I think that this is an example of using lore to back up a feat. For example, normally we would say, no, that didn't happen, and originally we found several things against it, saying that could just be a regular missile, the Arwing could be in the Great Fox, it could be teleporting, but none of those things held up for a few different reasons. The Great Fox, you see staying somewhere else. What?
Technically not the Great Fox at that point, just a mothership.
Technically not the Great Fox, yeah. But also, as far as that goes, they're interplanetary ballistic missiles.
They're launched from bases installed onto the planets.
The beat in the game is generally you have to operate quickly to stop these from launching across the solar system to destroy planets. And obviously, we didn't give the Arwing planet level durability or power output for being able to keep pace and destroy those. But we can see those traveling across the solar system really quickly. The general layout of the solar system matches up with other depictions of the Lilat system.
There were a few other points to it, though, like when you fight the missiles, you go into a fight, they seem really slow, and then whether they escape or whether you destroy them, they pick up right at that exact same spot that you fought them. And the missiles do move when you visit the planets, though. Andix, for what that's worth. So as for the missiles not moving, if we're actually talking about combat at 83C, they're not going to move any meaningful distance in the type of combat that we're talking about. They have to be destroyed basically instantly.
If they were moving slower, there's a chance.
And that's a good example of us not actually requiring like gameplay to be extremely measurable and real-time speeds of light speed, because it's got so much else backing it up. And then the other point that he wanted to bring up is that we don't actually know the time frame of like how long this takes, and that it could be taking weeks for the missiles to travel. To that, we have when you're on the planets and performing your missions, missiles can be launched and hit Corneria, showing that at the very most it's a scale of minutes.
And they're generally described that way as well.
Mm-hmm. And that level of difference isn't going to change the results. But
there's also kind of generosities we had to give to Sonic with that as well, such as traveling to the moon, but a level select screen being in between that.
Mm-hmm.
That was another example where we had to say, well, we can't necessarily tell how fast Supersonic was traveling. This could have taken him a week. But that was an example where we looked at, well, this is Supersonic. He's supposed to be really freaking fast. Chaos Emeralds have done this before. Just things that normally wouldn't be usable by themselves, but were usable to back up that feat for Sonic, and were usable to back up that feat for Fox. We can't use one without the other.
Uh-huh.
And is that about it for that?
Let's see. I think so.
Real fast, Davrion. We did expect this reaction to the fight. We had this reaction to the fight at first, because you're like, there's no way Sonic loses this. He's freaking Sonic the Hedgehog. We had to put it up against each other. We had a poll in the team server trying to predict what the like-dislike ratio would be, and we didn't want to do it. Like I said, I'm a fan of Sonic, and I don't like disappointing people. It's kind of the nature of this job with this specific series. But yeah, we expected backlash, and it's unfortunate to see. We really did put a lot of work into it. And like I said, I also totally understand. If it was me, I would be pissed off, especially if I was one of those people who put hours and hours and hours researching, like, I don't know, Carl Jung and Plato reading the Republic, things like that. Like, I'd be really upset if some new guys in the scene came in and talked about this version of Sonic who I had spent my whole life trying to disprove from a totally different rule set. Like, I'd be upset. That's how we were thinking about it at first. But as we tried things against the method that we have to with this series, which we use to keep every character bias-free as much as we can, apply the same standard to everyone, it just didn't hold up in the same way.
Do we want to take comments before we do that debunk video?
I'll pull up the debunk video. If you guys have any comments or questions, you can go ahead and put them in. This debunk video came out very quickly by Percival the Flame Knight. Is that what it is? In the interest of disclosure, I didn't watch it all the way through. I thought like it wouldn't be fair to him if in front of, I don't know, like 50 people, I had all this time to prepare for it. I didn't want to come off as attacking him or taking time to prove him wrong. I wanted to give a legitimate response and reaction to it. So we can watch through it a bit more. As I pull it up, in general, what I'm expecting to see is arguments that come from a different hierarchy than we can use. Things that kind of shift the goalpost of how we're measuring things. But like I said, it could be different as well. So we can go through both of those, but let's see. Any questions we missed?
I haven't seen anything recently, no.
All right, then I can go ahead and pull this up. As I do, let me just say, Isabelle versus Ganondorf, the animation has no right to be as good as it is, and the music has no right to be as good as it is, and I'm so excited for that one.
That one is great.
Yeah. Make sure you mute the video while watching because it'll be copyrighted. Oh, thanks for that. All right. So let's show screen. Here we go. So I just got done watching Fox versus Sonic from Smash Bracket, and it is freaking cringe. Now we can only use calcs because of their rules, so I'm going to show why Sonic absolutely bodies. We'll start with speed. So it sounds like he's going to be using the same rules as us, which actually would provide a really great debunk if he sticks within the rules and proves it otherwise. Like I said, none of us have watched through it entirely. I wanted it to be fair. Who wrote this?
That was me. That's from the FAQ.
I know. So isn't the speed, light speed dash slower than Sonic's top speed, meaning he's faster than light and base? We already kind of talked about that. We'll go forward to his point with it. Let's see. There we go. Wrong. Also could be wrong he's or wrong Lee.
These are the Hotara. They're an enemy from Sonic CD. They attack with a beam of light. So Sonic can move in tandem with the beam, which people assume to be moving at the speed of light, and therefore say that he is light speed, or at least relativistic. Whereas for us, the beams just don't meet the criteria we have for considering something to be light speed.
Yeah. But maybe he makes a different point here. I guess showing pixel measurements there. Okay, so Sonic CD in-game. This one is simple. In Sonic CD, Sonic fights Hotaris, is that how you say it? These light bulb enemies who fire light. Originally, I thought it would be best if I found Sonic's spin dash speed in relation to them, but that would involve me recording the game myself or finding some footage of the game. Where someone felt the need to spin dash during this fight for whatever reason. Oh man, I get that struggle. Trying to put people never want to upload videos of them sucking at video games, and so it's so hard to get footage of people getting hit by stuff.
If anyone wants to start a new trend of getting hit by everything as opposed to the no-hit runs that are common, we would appreciate it.
When I was doing the Mega Man video, which we didn't end up keeping, oh man, there's the only video that was usable. Someone was so ticked off at him for uploading. They're like, why would you upload this when you're so bad at the game? So anyways, he's using pixel measurements. We established it doesn't hold up. This is from Sonic at a complete halt to a run, not even full speed. By the way, classic Sonic has a wonky physics engine where you start off your run pretty darn slow. So that should put this into perspective. Which would be gameplay, but we allow for gameplay.
This is the same enemy from a cutscene where he does the same measurements. I've read through this thread.
Okay. It's a thread?
Yeah.
Okay. The instances of lasers dodging the sequence are likely some degree of relativistic.
But it's the same issue. You
Yeah.
can actually... The scene has light, like, lighting up the room faster than the beams, which I find fun.
Stylish, thank you so much for being here and for your help as a moderator. The server is so much less of a headache to both of us because you're here.
And all the new mods.
And all the new mods. Let's see. Hotaris reappears in Sonic Mania for a boss fight. Bet you didn't know that,
I didn't know that.
nerd. The Hotaru Hiwatt itself shoots its laser in one frame, and Sonic does not move very far in that time. I won't bother calculating that, but I would predict it would be somewhere in the sub-relativistic range. Anyway, the smaller enemies appear on screen again, and this is where it's quantifiable. Anything to add there?
No, it's... Yeah, nothing here.
And that's more of the same. Just doesn't hold up. Once again, these could hold up, but he's arguing for a different rule set. It doesn't work here. If he was arguing this for a different series, it could be convincing. But maybe he'll change it. Sonic starts off about 34 pixels away from the Hotaru, and then is 1 pixel near. So this is more of the same. Let's see. Unless someone is seriously going to debate that the internet does not work in the same way in Sonic as it does in real life, this feat is pretty much non-debatable.
Okay, that's from a different part of the document, where it's talking about Shadow reacting to the light speed circuit. I don't know why you skipped to that. Or did he just...
I didn't skip it. It seemed like this is in a notes app.
Yeah, he's copying it from the thread.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Maybe I accidentally skipped it. Yeah, this is just a different part then. Of oncoming obstacles that go through the circuit. Unless someone's seriously going to debate that the internet does not work in the same way in Sonic as it does in real life, this feat is pretty much non-debatable, unless you really insist on arguing hyperbole whilst not understanding what hyperbole means. I'm starting to get a feeling that it's maybe a catch-all for a lot of things. Is even like the stuff in parentheses from the thread?
I'm not sure.
You don't know anything about Sonic. How do
You're
you?
right. So to go over the light speed circuit, which isn't... maybe it's argued after this, but maybe Shadow has the reaction speed, but he is like not controlling his body. He's using thoughts to move, so his actual speed doesn't even scale to that, and therefore Sonic wouldn't either.
Yep. And Perfectionists, we're right near the end of the stream. We got to go through this, his second video, which is about a minute long, and then we have to read Lemon's fan fiction.
No, we don't.
We
can read that
promised.
on their own. No, we didn't.
All right.
Promised people would get it.
But
we
if two
asked.
Sonics run through... Oh, wait, that went fast. But if the two Sonics run through them at high speed, the erased time seems to start moving again.
Yeah,
What?
that's from Sonic Generations. Again, we talked about this. These places are frozen in time, and Tails says you gotta run through it to make them have time again.
Okay. This isn't even close to the research he does. We're not trying to take... I'm sure he does a ton of research. We're not trying to make commentary on his quality of research or anything like that. All we have as exposure to what he does is the video that he showed to us here. So I'm not trying to say he does bad work or effort or anything. In fact, I shared it out on my community tab so more people could see this. No commentary on him as his character or anything like that. We're just showing what he has here. Gets moved through space and time in the manner the flow of time gets erased and those places turn into pure white worlds. We talked about the white worlds. Need you say any more? Well, yes. Sorry. Attack potency and durability. There is a lot I could scale, but I will go to the major feat. Any predictions?
For Sonic's best attack potency? I actually don't know if he's doing calcs.
Sonic manages to defeat and overpower Ultimate Emerald in 30 seconds. Emerald's ability were not only upgraded by the Chaos Emeralds, nerd, which can pierce through entire stars, but also captured the energy of the final Egg Blaster, which can one-shot galaxies. Well, let's assume it did. That argument would be the power source one that we already talked about, right?
Yeah. Though, to be fair, Emerald was made with the explicit purpose of harnessing the power, so it's more realistic that he could do it. But he doesn't even have planet-level power since he was firing the Egg Blaster at the Earth instead of destroying it himself.
Once again, potentially not a bad argument if you were arguing for a different series. It only took like 5 seconds to make contact.
This is the speed of the laser of the final egg blaster going to destroy the nearest star cluster.
Okay. They give actual measurements on the distance of the star cluster?
No, they're just using the nearest one in real life.
Oh, okay. So, taking the Sonic universe, applying it to real life, taking what it would take to reach that. I've heard that their universe is based off of ours, but...
I mean, they're on Earth.
Oh, they're on Earth. Well, that would do it. There's some major speed upgrades there. Now about blowing up Hiatus. Dr. Eggman blew up the entire thing. Reading the page on the wiki, we will acknowledge that there is a star like the sun at the very end of said star cluster. This cluster that Vivi used in his original calc has a radius of 10 light years. Energy to destroy it. So this is just more of the same that we were already talking about, right?
Basically. So it calculated the speed of the laser, which Sonic is faster than... I've never actually heard a reason for why that.
Why he's faster than it?
Yeah. I guess because the Emerald should be able to make a more powerful laser, which also means a faster laser. And Sonic uses the Emeralds. And then this is a calc for the energy required to blow up the stars, which Sonic should be stronger than, because Eggman still wants the Emeralds.
Makes sense. This assumes an omnidirectional explosion was powerful enough to destroy the star, would be located at the end of the star cluster. Multi-solar system level for destroying multiple star systems. Who would have guessed? Chaos Emeralds as... Dr. Eggman would be looking for those when he blew up the star cluster. It would make no sense for the Chaos Emeralds to be weaker than the weapon used by Dr. Eggman.
I will point out, the Emeralds do like a lot of things that weapons don't do. Like moving continents, arguably, bringing Sonic back to life.
Does this hold up to that atomic bomb argument you made, or did you already say that one?
I didn't say that one. That's kind of another argument for the power level, or power source scaling, is that people say that, like, the Emeralds have displayed planetary strength, and therefore anyone using them should have that strength. But the strength isn't the same across all contexts or usages. So without that being demonstrated, we can't say that that's what happened. My example that Ink was talking about is that an atomic bomb works by, like, detonating atoms. But if you were to take those atoms out of the bomb, they're nowhere near as much of a threat. And that's, I think, the same way that we tend to treat power sources, is that they can be strong in certain contexts, but unless it's shown to demonstrate that power elsewhere, we can't assume that it can.
Yeah. Let's see, almost near the end of this, I think. Hypersonic due to being powered by the Super Emeralds, which are greater than Chaos Emeralds. Hypersonic speed would also scale. We talked about that. Different method, we're going to use Law of Surface. This is holding up to the same thing we talked about before. Once again, as we go through this, decent argument if it were for any other series. Just doesn't work here. Unless I'm misinterpreting something. I doubt he would make a whole video and intentionally put it against the rule set. So it is possible I'm misinterpreting. If there are ways that we are misinterpreting this, feel free to reach out, and I would be happy to respond to it. Yeah, unless you... Never mind. Ha! Now! Launch Final Egg Blaster. We've talked about Final Egg Blaster, right?
This is what we've just been talking about.
Eggman,
this is
what are
him
you doing?
destroying the stars.
Emerald would be so cool in Smash.
He would.
Okay, cool. So this is... Yeah. Anything in this you think we... Oh, wait. Doesn't even go over hacks. Includes invulnerability. We talked about that. We handle it differently. So once again, if this was a different series, it might work. Reality warping. Sonic shows us in Dark Spine. Did we talk about that?
No, I don't think we talked about it. So Dark Spine, at the end of the Sonic and the Secret Rings, Sonic arguably warps reality back to where he was beforehand. Our interpretation is either that it's limited to specifically undoing what happened there, or more likely that it was undone as a result of him defeating the enemy who was warping reality. I do want to talk about his invulnerability comment, though. I've seen a lot of people bring up how there are hacks called one thing or another that operate under a certain context or have certain powers. We don't use Versus Battle Wiki's hacks. I don't know how many other communities use them. But like we're not using that same system.
We don't use their hack system, their scaling system in terms of large wall or building, planet, island, things like that. Like I said, no problem with people who do, it's just not this. Fate manipulation. Solaris is stated many times to... Okay, we talked about Solaris. Anything we want to add there?
No.
We already talked about multiplayer. Shows how they loved balls. I read that very wrong.
Love how they showed bias. Allow Sonic his multiplayer hacks or don't allow multiplayer at all. This is a huge showcase of bias. You're right, and we address that.
Yeah, and we're sorry about that. No one take that out of context, please. This looks like he hopped back to a different argument. Sonic.
Yeah.
Sonic one-shots Fox without any equipment. This one is calculable. Oh, we went over that.
Yeah, that was more for the Final 8 Blaster.
Anyway, if there's other stuff you want to bring up, you are welcome to make an argument. I did watch through his other video, actually, because it was short. I can address that. He was basically just saying you can't expect the developers to actually show Sonic at fast speeds, because that would be unplayable. Which we talked about that earlier on. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We prioritize gameplay where it sounds like you don't, and that's all right. But yeah, Lemon doesn't want us to read his fan fiction, so if you want that another time, let us go.
Come to the Discord and you can ask.
Yep. But as far as that, Percival, if you're watching this, really, once again, thank you for making that. We do want to be checked and refine our research. You're not going to see us use multiplayer items in future Star Fox episodes. That wasn't something we should have done, even if we do decide to use the durability, because I mentioned it earlier. If you do have another debunk you'd like to make, as long as you make it within the hierarchy of our rules, which we explained here, I would be more than happy to watch it or respond to it. I'd even share it out as long as it's like within our rule set. But yeah, I think that's everything. Sorry for the short stream. But yeah, we went over this whole document. We really did, and I know it might not seem like it to a lot of Sonic fans, because it's disappointing, it sucks. We really did put in a ton of research. Our research team is really dedicated. They went through everything. We talked to the community for a long time. Someone says we should remove the multiplayer weapons from the fight currently. I can't edit the current video, but we actually are having one of our animators reanimate that. And it's not going to be in there. We shouldn't have done that, and hopefully that'll be more palatable. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope that this provided some more context for why we assumed the way that we did. If someone's saying Sonic stomps, don't just say stupid Sonic fanboys are salty and can't take this, because like I said, there's a legitimate argument that Sonic wins depending on the rule set. Even with this one, there's some arguments that he could make. He just didn't take it enough of the time. Do you have anything else you want to add as final words?
Just that it was way closer than we expected, even with like everything. It came out to be a very close match. Full disclosure, when I was making matches, I didn't have good matches for either, and as a Sonic fan, I told you my Chao Hippotank origin story. I thought this is going to be a really fun way to get a fan favorite character to the next round. I don't intentionally make stomps like that, unless it's Isabelle versus Ganondorf, just because I want Ganondorf out of the bracket. I hate Legend of Zelda. I don't take this out of context. But yeah, once again, I kind of lost track of what I was saying. You were saying you made it as a joke to give Sonic an early win.
Yeah, I thought it would be really fun. We don't go into these with any bias. We really do take it from the ground up. And we don't use research other people have used, like Versus Battle Wiki or Death Battle. We really try to fact check everything from the source.
I do think that we have bias. I think a lot of people can't recognize it in ourselves, but our team is big enough that bias is in check based on other people's bias.
Yep.
So we try our best to get rid of it. Also, someone asked how we would handle hacks like time travel in our rule set. As long as it's demonstrated to be something usable in a combat scenario, I think it's fine to give it. That would probably be very strong.
Yep.
I know a few people have things kind of like that, but we'll see how it ends up with them. We haven't made any calls.
How powerful is Isabelle? Well, we don't use like Versus Battle Wiki scaling. I think when we put her power, it was, 1A? I don't necessarily know what that means. But something like that. 1A, that's 1 is very low on the number scale. A is first letter of the alphabet, so probably not much.
Don't listen to him.
Star Fox bias fanboys.
I actually don't like Star Fox that much. Especially after I had to play through Star Fox 2 for research. That game is garbage.
We haven't played. They are cool in animations, I will say that. But yeah. 1A is out of... Oh, crap. Oh, man. Oh, well. Hope you guys like Isabelle. Anyway, I know what 1A is. I'm just messing with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. If you want to chat some more, come to the Discord server. Try to keep it civil. I hope we did a good job of showing we really were trying to keep things with an open mind. The research team really put a ton of effort into it. Like, as you can see, he had just most of the things you guys mentioned off the top of his head.
And for what it's worth, disagreeing with the conclusions of the research is fine. I know that won't happen. But like we've considered everything you want to bring up.
Yeah.
At the very least, I don't want the other researchers on the team disparaged because they've all worked really hard and they're volunteering because they're awesome people.
And the animators are doing amazing work.
Right.
We even researched Carl Jung and Plato and all sorts of stuff like this.
So go ahead and blame me if you don't like the conclusions of the research.
Yeah.
But please keep in mind that the other people are people
Yeah.
and have feelings. So be nice.
Yeah. Anyway, we hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. This is a long one. I doubt our other post-battle live streams will be this long because there's probably not going to be other battles this controversial.
I think Isabelle might be just as contentious.
We can't spoil that. All right. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.